And at 10, Barry Allen. Okay, I know you're probably confused with this one. Like, how is Barry Allen a child of himself? One of the Flashes and the original Silver Age Flash. Well, in the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic crossover event, Barry ends up running so fast that he ruptures the time barrier. This kills him, but also it converts his physical being into lightning. And since he was running so fast, he also travels through time, because, you know, comics. In fact, he travels back to the day he got his powers, perhaps because he was thinking about how that one day led to all of this. However, when his physical form, now lightning, travels through time, he actually becomes the lightning bolt that struck himself. So Barry Allen gave Barry Allen his powers. So in a way, of Flashes creating other Flashes, Barry Allen is the child of Barry Allen. Yeah, you heard me right. It was also later strongly implied that Barry's soul resides inside the Speed Force, the source of power for all speedsters. So technically, if you want to look at it like that as well, every speedster who uses the Speed Force is also a child of Barry. And at 9, Velocity. Velocity is a clone of Jay Garrick created by Brain and Monsieur Mala and sold to Ratu Benin, dictator of Mali. Velocity is unleashed upon the Outsiders when they're discovered by Benin, and the speedster comes close to defeating the team while Metamorpho attacks him with acid and manages to overpower him. He's later taken by Green Lantern, who states that the Outsiders cannot be trusted. He also has all the powers of the Flash, except with one flaw, that he cannot survive outside of his suit for long. And I mean, it's certainly a badass suit, because like, look at that thing. If I wore that thing, I'd never want to take it off. Add the fact that I can't take it off, I would die, and then there's no way that you're getting that thing off me. And Velocity, like Jay Garrick, doesn't need access to the Speed Force to run at superhuman speeds, which is certainly beneficial if, say, the Speed Force were to die because the Spectre had to unlock its power during Crisis and it threatened, you know, to end life on all planets and literally every other Earth was destroyed and you were stranded at the vanishing point, you know. And at 8, Jenny Onatz. Jenny Onatz was the granddaughter of Barry Allen and a speedster like him. She was a member of the Legion of Superheroes under the name XS. Despite her ancestry though, Jenny did not at first display any signs of super speed. However, the Dominators, knowing her family heritage, captured her, and at the sight of seeing her father tortured, her latent super speed powers did activate. She managed to escape with her father before stray fire from the Dominators caused their base to explode, and during the Legion's first trip to the 20th century, XS was separated from them. She ended up meeting her cousin Impulse and became good friends with him. She ended up revealing how she was participating in an archaeological dig in the future, and XS fought side by side with Impulse and other speedsters during the events of Dead Heat. Afterwards, the 27th Century Flash fixed her grandfather's cosmic treadmill, enabling her to go home. Unfortunately, she overshot, encountering 2 further incarnations of the Legion before getting back to her time. Impulse, though, left her a goodbye note in the building that she was participating in excavating, so that's sweet. And at 7, Malcolm Thawne. Malcolm Thawne is the lost twin brother of Barry Allen. He is Cobalt Blue, one of a number of evil counterparts of the Flash that wields the blue flame. On the stormy night of May 13th, 2 pregnant women came to the office of Fallville, Iowa's Dr. Gilmore. However, the doctor had been drinking that night and he had sent his nurse home. The child of one of the women, Charlie Thawne, had been strangled by its own umbilical cord, and Gilmore was too intoxicated to save the baby. However, luckily for Gilmore, lightning caused a blackout in the hospital. Gilmore quickly enters the room where another woman, Nora Allen, gave birth, and Gilmore, to cover up the death of Charlene's baby, in the darkness quickly removes the first baby and then closes the baby's mouth so that it doesn't cry, and then he gives that twin to the Thawne family, telling the Allen family that one of their children didn't make it. Yeah, the twin that remained with the Allens was called Barry and grew up to be the Flash, and the other twin, however, was raised by the Thawnes and was named Malcolm. This is also the distant, like, great times 20 grandfather of Eobard Thawne. Yeah, the Reverse Flash. So Eobard and Barry actually share the same blood, which is freaking nuts. Damn, I did not know that, although I probably should have. And at 6, Jay West. Jay West and his twin sister Iris were born to the third Flash, Wally West, and his wife Linda Park. Although the twins were initially miscarried as the result of an attack by Zoom, Linda's pregnancy was miraculously restored during a later battle, somehow. When Wally went into the Speed Force during a battle with Superboy Prime, he brought Linda and the infant twins with him, and spent some time in an Earth-like world inhabited by an alternate version of Jay Garrick, and they traveled to another planet occupied by technologically advanced aliens who had dealings with a Flash in the past. Yep, this is actually true. When they were first born, Jay and his sister exhibited no signs of having inherited their father's powers. However, after turning 3 months old, their metabolisms sped up and they began to age rapidly and exhibited powers. Their alien hosts, I mean, like, not like they were hosted, like the aliens that were living with the Wests, I guess I should say, taught Linda the basics of operating machinery that would stabilize the twins' powers, and I guess kind of halt their accelerated aging. Jay once overheard his father explain this to a Justice League teammate though, and he mentioned the possibility that the twins could age so much that they died. Deeply frightened by this, he kept this information to himself, but later on did reveal it to his sister, who she revealed that she already kind of guessed that. I mean, like, it's kind of obvious. Halfway through into number 5, Nora West-Allen. In a previous timeline, Nora went back to the past to finally meet her father and became part of Team Flash, working alongside her parents and her friends. However, unbeknownst to the team at the time, Nora was working with Bart Thawne, who was imprisoned in 2049, on a secret agenda to destroy Cicada's dagger, and so that he would be saved from execution, whereas Nora was trying to save Barry from vanishing in a future crisis. After Team Flash defeated Cicada by administering the metahuman cure to her younger self and destroying her uncle's dagger, Nora was then erased from existence once a new timeline started to set in. However, in the current post-crisis timeline created by Oliver Queen and the Paragons, Nora is a vigilante operating in 2049 who fights metahuman criminals such as Godspeed alongside her younger brother Bart. During one fight with Godspeed though, he went to the Flash Museum and used the cosmic treadmill to travel back in time. Fearing that they would never be able to find him if he got away, Nora and Bart broke their family's #1 rule and decided to follow him, eventually ending up in the present. Well, I guess our present, not their present. Saying present is kind of a broad term. However, Nora, I guess this post-crisis Nora, grew up with stories of her other timeline self. Of like, her parents were telling her about her other version, which is pretty messed up if you ask me. Like your parents going on and on about another version of literally you that you desperately have to try to live up to. Yeah, that's messed up. This is in the Arrowverse, by the way. And 4, Inertia. The bitter feud between the Allen family and the Thawne family would span generations, although despite them actually kind of sharing blood. Even in the 30th century, President Thawne sought to recruit Bart Allen in his revenge campaign against the Allens, since Bart was half Thawne himself. When that failed, Thawne mixed Bart's DNA with Thawne genetic material to create a speedster clone who he named Thaddeus Thawne. Or I guess Thaddeus Thawne. Either way. Come on, really? Alliteration. Whereas Bart grew up in a hyper-accelerated world, Thaddeus' childhood was the exact opposite of this. Cause you know, reverse Flash. His development was super slow, which led to the young speedster to become more calculating and methodical. You know, the exact traits a sociopath has. Thaddeus was also taught to hate the Allen family, and Impulse in particular. In addition to this modification, Thaddeus' growth and development was slowed down. This is in contrast to Bart's accelerated development. However, after killing Bart, Wally West had other plans for him. Upon hearing of Bart's death, an enraged Flash, this Flash being Wally West, hunted Inertia down. Though he thought of killing him, Flash decided instead to do something worse. He used his abilities to slow Inertia's movements down to the point where he was totally immobile, essentially a living statue, and then he placed Inertia on display in the Flash Museum, facing statues of Bart Allen as Impulse and Kid Flash. Though he could still think, see, and hear in normal time, Inertia was doomed to spend eternity in a state of near total paralysis, staring at images of Bart, plus being gawked at by everyone coming to the Flash Museum. Oh, that's so brutal. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Bart Allen. Bart Allen was the product of the union between two families that had been bitter rivals for centuries. His father, Don Allen, was the son of Barry Allen, the second Flash, and his mother was Maloney Thawne, daughter of the Earth government president and descendant of Flash villains Cobalt Blue and Professor Zoom. Bart was born with his grandfather's speed, and he had an incredibly high metabolism that also caused him to age at hyperspeed. When he was chronologically 2 years old, physically, he looked like he was 12. After Wally helped him solve his aging problem, Bart helped Wally defeat Cobra. Bart then moved to Manchester, Alabama with Max Mercury. Max had also used his connections to supply Bart with a birth certificate, stuff like that, passport, you know the deal. And Bart began the 9th grade at Manchester Junior High, when he was probably like supposed to be like 4. He managed to make quite a few friends, chief among them being Carol Buckland. Max continued to train him in the art of super speed, having him run off courses while dodging axes and knives and solving jigsaw puzzles in midair. You know, Stuff like that, I guess. Ultimately enlisting his aid to battle his old foe Savitar. During this time, Bart served a brief stint in the New Titans before becoming one of the founding members of Young Justice, before getting killed. But ultimately, in at number 2, the Tornado Twins. The Tornado Twins, Dawn and Dawn Allen, are the children of Iris West and Barry Allen. In one of the possible futures, instead of being heroes though, they turned into supervillains and terrorized the future Central City. According to Professor Zoom, one of the reasons for this change was because of Barry's absence in their lives, which made them misguided and hated their own father, which is weird because in the Flash show, Nora was like obsessed with her dad, but you know, whatever. Dawn, D-O-N, is the father of Bart Allen, and Dawn, D-A-W-N, is the mother of Jenny Ognatz. The duo though ended when Dawn was killed by a Dominator in the Flash number 769, nice, in June of 2021. These are pretty damn powerful characters, and they're at number 2 because you kinda have to count them together, so yeah, 2 people is definitely gonna be more powerful than 1. But this is actually, interestingly enough, supposed to be the twins that Barry had in the original Arrowverse timeline. However, seemingly after Flashpoint, it went from Dawn to Nora, and then it went from Nora to Nora and Bart. This seems to be hinted at since during the 100th episode of The Flash that takes place in season 5, a 2015 Thawne disguised as Harrison Wells assumes that Nora's name is Dawn before being corrected by Barry. And finally, in at number 1, the Forces. Okay, this is certainly going off book here, but the most recent season of The Flash introduced 3 additional forces into the Arrowverse. While recreating the Speed Force with the power of love and positive thinking, Barry and Iris ended up creating 3 new forces along with it. For the first half of the season, these are kind of the big bads of the show. However, for some reason, since they were created along with the new Speed Force, they refer to these forces, including the Speed Force itself, which materializes as Nora Allen, Barry's mother, as their kids. Which is weird enough given that technically Barry has now given birth to his mother in a sense, but by that definition, the forces are also literally the most powerful children of the Flash. They're literal forces of nature. They refer to themselves as a family. The Sage Force calls the Strength Force his sister, and Barry and Iris mom and dad. And technically, without Barry and Iris, they wouldn't have been born. However, since I'm referring to the Arrowverse versions of these forces, plenty of diehard comic fans are going to be mad at me, but that's fine. Barry literally gave birth to the Speed Force, and that's enough for me to claim that they're his most powerful children. Deal with it.
Number 10, Crusader. Crusader is the daughter of X-Men team member Rogue and Avenger Captain America. I know, a weird combination. But in the reality of Earth 9811, these two ended up together after the heroes and villains on Battleworld decided to call a truce. Remaining there, they settled down and raised families, putting their differences aside. I'm not sure how their relationship worked, with Rogue not really being able to touch people and all at this point, or how she had a child considering that, but perhaps, like on Earth 616, she eventually was able to work through the trauma causing this side effect of her powers. Or perhaps the Captain America of Earth 9811 was immune to her involuntary energy and power draining effects. Either way, Sarah is their daughter. She gets much of her power from her mother, or rather she gets much of her power from the power her mother had absorbed in her day, meaning that Sarah is super strong, durable, and can fly. She is also considered worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and wields her father's shield. Number 9, Wolverine. I really wanted to put Laura Kinney higher up on this list because, well, I love her so much, but unfortunately the psionics are just always pushing some of my favorite and most powerful characters further down on these lists. Those psionics. Oh well. Laura Kinney as X-23 and now Wolverine is still one of the most powerful children of the X-Men around. Some argue that she is more clone, while others argue that she is more biological offspring of Logan, but in reality, she's kind of a bit of both. She was created as a female clone of Wolverine after his genetic material was combined with that of her creator, scientist Sarah Kinney. Sarah noticed that there were damage spots basically in the samples of Logan's genetic material that they had, which was why their cloning process had been unsuccessful up to this point. And so she used her own genetic material to patch those rough spots, which made Laura a female clone. Sarah was forced to carry Laura to term as a surrogate by her jealous colleague Xander Rice, as punishment for even creating the female clone to begin with, a strategy that admittedly had not been approved. Laura has powers similar to her father. She has a regenerative healing factor and was also trained from birth to be a skilled fighter, bodyguard, and assassin. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more children of the X-Men, there are a lot out there in the multiverse. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality of 13729. Yeah, sadly Storm and T'Challa have never had a child together in the main continuity. I know, it's a bit of a bummer. Unless they had like a real secret child that we just don't know about yet, but I doubt it. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm, that she's a skilled combatant as well. As while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she is also an extremely skilled fighter. And if she's Black Panther's daughter, then she should definitely be a skilled fighter. I mean, you got two amazing parents that are both amazing fighters, so just saying. Number 7. Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the son of Charles Xavier and Mystique, if you can believe that. I know, it's pretty shocking. Charles Xavier II was technically born into the reality of Earth 616, where we later find out that while Mystique actually took the form of Moira when giving birth, Charles actually knew that he was in a relationship with Raven, so it wasn't like a trick of hers. They were actually just wanted to be together, I guess. This version of Charles, however, is an all grown up one from the alternate future of Earth 13729. When his powers first manifested, he accidentally killed his adoptive mother and ended up later joining forces with his half-brother Raze, another child of Mystique's sired by Wolverine, another child of the X-Men. Charles Xavier II has a brilliant and conniving mind and, like his father, is an immensely gifted telepath, capable of using his powers to bend others to his will. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and while you might not think of Magneto as being an X-Men, considering, you know, he started out as an X-Men villain, he has also worked with the team before and even served as a member himself. Heck, at one point he was in charge of the whole New Mutants crew, let's not forget that. Magneto may have some questionable methods when it comes to getting justice that put him on the spectrum of villain, but I think at the end of the day, he's just trying to do what's best for mutants. Or at least what he thinks is best for mutant kind. Polaris, like her father, also has magnetic-based powers, which, like her father, are also pretty impressive. Polaris is considered an alpha-level mutant and recently got to join the X-Men team herself after being elected to join them in the Krakoan X-Men elections. Psychic elections. Imagine if we could all just vote psychically. That would be awesome. That would be so much easier. You would just like sit down and you'd be like, who do I want to vote for? Done. Number 5. Cable. Cable is the son of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, non-X member Madeline Pryor, who later becomes the villain known as the Goblin Queen, and another X-Man's, Jean Grey, who kind of becomes like an adoptive mother but who also possesses Madeline's memories of raising baby Christopher. Because comics. Cable is Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, often referred to as just Nathan Summers or really just Cable, although back in the day we did know him as Baby Christopher. Cable as a baby was kidnapped by Apocalypse and infected with the techno-organic virus. This is the only thing that makes him weak-ish, but really he is still amazingly strong, as he can even fend off that virus, containing it to one side of his body using his psionic powers. That in and of itself is pretty impressive, as the techno-organic virus is generally known for being, well, unstoppable. Even with his psionic powers mainly preoccupied, Cable is still a hard one to beat, as he has so many combatant-based skills that he brings to the table, and he is also an experienced time traveler besides. Number 4. Rachel Summers. Yes, get ready, because many of the most powerful X-Kids out there just happen to be Summers related, so yeah, get ready for that. Honestly, I've always wanted to do a video just to explain the complicated nature that is the Summers and Grey family tree, which honestly is a lot, and it's very timey-wimey. Rachel herself is one of those very complex kids of theirs. She is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers from the alternate Earth of 811. In that reality, she was made into a hound, a weapon used to hunt down mutants, even being one herself. Rachel is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic who also has the ability to chrono-skim and manipulate time, even traveling through it. Rachel is also known for being an avatar of the Phoenix, at one time actually considered the true avatar for it, but then later having the power sort of dialed down to a mere echo of it. So she was no longer the true avatar. They were just like, you just have a thing, and it's not even like the real Phoenix Force, but it's like a version of it. Still, the seeming piece or echo of the Phoenix Force that resides within her has been known to flare up from time to time, or her connection to the Phoenix Force, however we want to see that, occasionally boosting Rachel to an off off the charts level of power. But like I said, that doesn't happen all the time. Number 3. Hope Summers. Hope is the adopted daughter of Cable, who was originally known as the Mutant Messiah Baby. Cable saved Hope from Bishop, who basically wanted to destroy her. In Bishop's reality, the Mutant Messiah would end up causing the event that led to the oppression and persecution of mutants. However, in Cable's reality, the Mutant Messiah would grow up to become a savior. So you can see why these two were opposed on this topic. For the X-Men of Earth 616, the Mutant Messiah was the first new mutant to have been born since basically M-Day, and so she brought hope to the mutants of the 616 reality. Cable body slided with Hope to another time to raise her in safety. He would end up naming Hope after her adoptive mother, his love who died, Hope, and she got the Summers name from Cable himself. But although she looks a lot like Jean, she actually has no biological relation to the Summers or the Grey families, at least not that we know of. Hope's mutant abilities allow her to copy the powers of anyone within a certain range. Hope also gains access to these powers without struggling at all to use them, receiving them basically at their peak level and with the auto knowledge basically of how to use them. So if you're like, oh, she's gotta like figure it out, no, she's just like instant god mode with those powers basically. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. Wanda is known for being one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. She has used her powers to completely warp reality the world over, and her chaos magic has pulled off other immensely world-changing feats, such as flipping the alignment of all major heroes and villains in the comics during the events of Axis. Initially, her chaos magic powers were believed to be somewhat mutant in origin. In fact, they were kind of presented initially as like Jinx-like mystical mutant abilities during her first appearances. However, we've since learned that both Wanda and her superpowered brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, were never really mutants at all, nor were they related to Magneto. However, they still spent a good amount of their life around Magneto, who secretly believed them to be his children, and then another good amount of time thinking that he was their actual father, until it was revealed that this was all due to manipulation by the High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary just coming in and messing pretty much everybody up when it comes to their backstories and origins. Wanda herself has never really gotten along with the X-Men, especially since the events of M-Day, but she is still considered, I think, a part of Magneto's family, and a powerful one at that, regardless of her status as a mutant or a non-mutant. I know there are some people out there that want to be like, it never happened, but like, they still spent a lot of time together thinking that they were family, so I think we can still count it, friends. Also, make Wanda a mutant again. Do it. Make it happen. Give me Wanda and Quicksilver back. Number 1. X-Man. X-Man is Nathaniel Grey, the lab-born child made by combining the genetic materials of both Jean Grey and Cyclops. So basically like Cable, but if he had been made perfectly by villain Mr. Sinister. He actually hails from the alternate reality of AOA, Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295. Here, Sinister created him to use as his own weapon, but of course, Nate being so powerful, managed to escape Sinister and instead ended up being raised by Forge of Earth 295. He is considered one of the most powerful mutants of all time, which would also make him one of the most powerful children of the X-Men out there. Nate can warp reality, resurrect the dead, resurrect himself, travel to alternate Earths and dimensions, and even manipulate the time stream. He's basically the most OP of characters when it comes to the Marvel Universe. And if you've seen artwork of him, you will probably recognize him as someone who looks like Mutant Jesus, which yes, he is god level, so that is the point. Number 10. Karma. Karma is a mutant with very specific powers, so it should surprise no one that she is part of the New Mutants team. I actually love the New Mutants for this reason. A lot of their members tend to be forgotten and yet are super powerful when their abilities are properly utilized. Xian Koiman possesses limited telepathic abilities, but can have a strong sense of sort of psychic projection. Karma can emit a wave of energy that disables her target's consciousness, allowing her to take over control of their body, experiencing what they experience as though she were actually in their body, sensing what they taste, hear, smell, see, and feel. Those she controls will awaken unaware, afterwards experiencing this possession as if they had just been in a dream and basically had been sleepwalking. She can also do this on a mass scale, possessing multiple people, though she must overcome many challenges in order to fluidly control multiple people at once. Number 9. Hijack. Hijack is David Bond, a technopath mutant who can use his abilities to telepathically control any vehicle. He has used his powers to control massive sentinels and even control an entire helicarrier. The rule seems to be if you can steer it, fly it, or drive it, Hijack can control it. Although it has been implied that the vehicle in question likely needs to have some kind of mechanical makeup, so sailboats are probably not something Bond could manipulate, unless you had a sailboat that also had an engine, which I think is a thing now. I don't think all sailboats are just sails. Still, in a world where we are surrounded by tech and tons of engine-powered vehicles, David Bond's abilities are pretty powerful. Alas, he has only appeared in less than 50 issues of comics. Someone tell me, where is David Bond now? Where is he on Krakoa? Is he there? I want to see him. Number 8. Summoner. Summoner is a new mutant whose name also signifies the type of mutant that they are. They are the child of Apocalypse's first horsemen of war. Arakko, the landmass itself, was drawn to Krakoa and Krakoa to it. The two fused together to increase the size of the land overall, although Arakko is not yet considered safe and is basically known as kind of the monster territory part of Krakoa. I mean, technically it still isn't Krakoa, but they're attached now, so they are each other. Summoner's abilities allow them to summon the dark beasts of Arakko. We don't know too much about them yet because they've only been in a few issues, but what we do know is that they can withstand the blast of one of Cable's thermal grenades, his last one in fact, without taking virtually any damage. So overall, they seem like they're going to be pretty crazy and powerful. X of Swords, I'm assuming we're going to see more about them. Number 7. Dust. Dust is Soraya Kadir. She was enslaved as a child but freed by the X-Men. Originally, she did not want to reveal herself to the mutants and hid herself by turning into scattered sand. When Jean Grey sensed her presence and encouraged Soraya to reveal and introduce herself, she did so by referring to herself as Turab, which is Arabic for dust. She can turn herself into dust and manipulate her body to move at high speeds, causing her to become a deadly sandstorm to her enemies. As sand particles, she can also enter the bodies of other people, causing internal damage. Dust is also resistant to magic and telepathic manipulation or detection while in her sand form. Dust is another person that I feel like we never see enough of in the comics. Someone bring back Dust. Number 6. Layla Miller. Layla's abilities, skills, and powers tend to be pretty specific, which means that she might not inherently seem powerful to readers. Layla has been shown to be able to reanimate beings, heal wounds, and appears to be immune to reality warping. She also has a lot of knowledge about her own future life and the events surrounding it, as she spent time in the future and then returned and uploaded all she had learned into her younger self when she returned to that Layla's present, which I guess was technically her past. Her vast knowledge often comes in handy and is what helped the mutants to figure out who was really after the baby mutant Messiah during the events of Messiah Complex. Her own knowledge has also technically helped her in gaining the knowledge that she is needed to have in order to gain it, if that makes any sense. Timey-wimey stuff. Number 5. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are twin siblings born to mutant parents. Their powers as such manifested when they were younger than most. They haven't been in a ton of comics, most about probably 11 issues, but they have been shown to be pretty deadly and powerful even as children, both in Extermination and recently in the newest run of New Mutants. Maxime can influence others' emotions while Manon can alter someone's memories, or recall their memories past. When combined, their powers actually allow them to manipulate the minds of others to the point that they can easily control them, shaping their victims into whatever they like them to be and making them do whatever they want. In issues 3 and 4 of New Mutants, both Maxime and Manon were captured along with Armor, Glob, Angel Salvador, Beak, and the couple's children, but managed to escape. Manon and Maxime helped to free the rest of the group by distracting their captives, manipulating one of them into killing the other. Number 4. Mirage. You might not recognize her mutant name, but if you've seen the New Mutants film, or you are familiar with the New Mutants at all, Mirage will be someone that you maybe know. Mirage is actually Daniel Moonstar. Standard X-Men fans may be less familiar with Dani, but she has also been one of the X-Men, and she is known for her affiliation with the New Mutants crew and all the female defenders who are also known as Valkyror. Dani herself became a Valkyrie when the New Mutants were kidnapped by Amora the Enchantress and taken to Asgard, so she doesn't just have her mutant power of illusion creation and telepathy, which originally she could only use to recreate the fear of others, but she also has some of the powers granted to Valkyries. Oh, and she can make cool psionic arrows too. Number 3. Strong Guy. Strong Guy has similar powers to another mutant we talked about on part 1 of this list. His abilities allow him to use kinetic energy to augment his strength, increasing it. However, he cannot hold the energy for long as it could severely harm him, distort his physical form, or even kill him. Still, even with the rule that he must expel any absorbed energy within less than 2 minutes of absorption, he is pretty powerful, using his powers to safely lift up to around 100 tons. Strong Guy's real name is Guido Carosella, and he first appeared in the original New Mutant series in issue 29. Number 2. A mutant with no name. In the alternate reality belonging to the Ultimate Universe of 1610, we got a story that introduced us to a mutant who had no name. This mutant's powers were so devastating that we were not permitted the time to get to know him. His powers had only just manifested, but they were so deadly that they caused the deaths of over 200 people in his hometown, including his parents and his girlfriend at high school, with the deaths being almost instantaneous. But there was no snapping involved. It wasn't a Thanos thing. No infinity gauntlets. His mutant power was basically to kill everything around him, radiating toxins and poisons that basically vaporize organic tissue. He was so dangerous, powerful, and deadly that Wolverine was sent to eliminate him, as the young mutant's existence posed too much of a threat to the mutant image, as well as both humans and mutants alike, just in general. Number 1. Matthew Malloy. Matthew Malloy is one of the strongest, most random mutants who now belongs to the alternate timeline of Earth 14923, because he was just too powerful to basically continue to exist. Like many of the most epic mutants, he had reality warping powers and was additionally considered Omega level in terms of his ability. Matthew's powers unfortunately were often tied to his emotions, which proved problematic and often resulted in massively destructive outbursts of energy. In the end, Tempest traveled back in time and, with help from Professor X of the past, was able to prevent Matthew's parents from ever meeting, meaning that he was never born.
At number 10 we have Captain America. I know it feels weird to have Cap in the 10th spot on any list about power, but remember who he's up against. Captain America's best trait is his unmatched leadership stat, which for superheroes is a really important angle to consider. But on a list about individual power, I'd say it only goes as far as who he's actually leading and ultimately fighting alongside. But without his strategic advantage, Captain America is still an extremely powerful Avenger and beats out plenty of other contenders that didn't make the list. The combination of his impressive fighting skill and his advanced strength levels is good enough to garner attention, but of course his vibranium shield is what really brings him to another level. Vibranium is a metal that actually absorbs all energy and contains it entirely. This means that whatever the shield is hit with, the metal itself will absorb the recoil almost entirely. Not to mention, it can pack a serious punch when it's thrown and will return to Steve's hand on command. This gives Cap a huge offensive and long-range advantage when he isn't showing off his massively impressive hand-to-hand combat skills. At number 9 is the one and only Spider-Man. It was tough to decide where to put Spidey on this list because he's so versatile, but he's also quite young and inexperienced. Well, at least he's supposed to be. But what really puts him at one ranking higher than the almighty Captain America are his Spidey senses and his healing factor. These two abilities really give Spidey the edge and help to define him as a more agile and crafty hero than many of the others on the list. Where Spider-Man might lack in sheer power, he makes up for in his adept precision and dexterity. And while he may not pack a huge punch in some of the more advanced combat situations that the Avengers face, he doesn't let anyone get the jump on him in any case, because he can always sense what's coming and has very quick reflexes to make the next move before his opponents even realize they'd missed him. In other words, Spider-Man often plays the role of David while his opponents play the part of Goliath. Another thing that's important to note is that his suit upgrades allow him to gain huge strength boosts, expanding his power levels to a level that may never see its limit. At number 8, I'm putting Wolverine. As the most published comic book superhero ever, Wolverine has had the most experience out of anyone on this list. Not just because of all the things he's done, but also because of all the years that he has lived. His healing factor is so impressive that his age is extended by a great margin, making him appear nearly immortal. In fact, there have been a few times where Wolverine was entirely reduced to his adamantium-coated skeleton, and he was still walking around as if he'd just been a little banged up. But on top of his durability, he's also one of the most balanced heroes all around, which makes him a huge contender on a list about power. He's extremely agile, being quite skilled in acrobatics. He's got a very powerful offensive stat with his adamantium claws. He's also got a stealth stat since he's able to blend in as a civilian when his claws are retracted. He's got insane durability with his whole skeleton being coated in a metal only comparable to vibranium, and even if he takes a massive blow, his healing factor acts so fast and so efficiently that he's back to full health before he's even stood up. He's one of the big guns.
Number 7. Monica Rambeau. With the title of Captain Marvel, it's easy to not fully understand the powers of Monica Rambeau, but they are different to her other Captain Marvel counterparts, and in my opinion, she is my favorite of the characters to take on the title. After being bombarded with extra-dimensional energy emitted by a stolen device, Monica Rambeau acquired the ability to convert her body mass into and control any form of energy of the electromagnetic spectrum. Those energy forms include visible light, radio waves, electricity, X-rays, microwaves, infrared radiation, ultraviolet radiation, cosmic rays, and gamma radiation. But whenever she comes into contact with new forms of energy, such as neutrinos, Monica can mimic that energy's wavelength as well, given enough time, and she'll be able to actually transform into it. As you can imagine, there is a lot she can do with these various forms of energy: flight, speed of light travel, intangibility, invisibility, energy blast and absorption, hologram creation and appearance alteration, size alteration, power boosting, and she can even become a kind of hard solid light. Number 6. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than him. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many more. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate Chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected the psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant power boost when he is using the 10 rings. He can use the rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and even use them to levitate and fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate energies from the rings to do many things, including projecting said energy and creating an energy-based blast. And then just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Number 5. Moondragon. It may come as a surprise, but Heather Douglas is actually one of the most powerful human-born telepaths in existence. She gained her power after she trained under the Shaolin monks of Titan, thanks to Thanos' father, Mentor, taking her in. Her telepathic abilities rival and surpass even those of powerful mutants like Professor X. With this power, she has been able to mentally enslave an entire planet of beings who were constantly at war with each other, bringing peace to said planet. She has been in a psionic stalemate with the Sorcerer Supreme, and she's even straight up de-lifed a clone of Thanos who, at the time, had even greater mental powers than Professor X. Her powers are so powerful, in fact, that they can maintain themselves subconsciously, meaning that even if she is unconscious, she will maintain the effects of said powers. A huge part of her character, even the reason for her awesome Moondragon name, comes from the fact that she is, or was, actually under the influence of an extremely powerful entity known as the Dragon of the Moon, who has been manipulating her for a long time, even initially letting Heather believe she had overcome the demon. But thanks to this dragon, she has been able to take on a dragon form where she can move faster than light, survive in space, and was super strong and durable. Number 4. Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of. Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid, that in a tragic comic book backstory was exposed to Jack and gave him his awesome abilities. Due to the cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts, apparently in honor of his father's love of card games, and not because it's actually his name, basically. His biological structure was reformatted to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength specifically has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. But in addition, thanks to a symbiote energy sub-device, Jack went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from the deep recesses of his brain, which is pretty cool.
At number 3 is Nova. Being basically the protector of the cosmos, Richard Rider's Nova had to make it into the top 20. Being one of the primary members of the intergalactic law enforcement agency, Nova brings a cosmic level of power to the Avengers. And the main ability that really puts him above the rest is his power absorption, which is capable of using an enemy's power against them. And the limits of this power are yet to be truly maxed out, meaning that I'm not sure if we can even know the extent of his power level quite yet. But considering he's been able to weaponize gravity itself with this ability, I'd say there aren't even really limits at all. Of course, when he takes in power, it has to go somewhere, and it's usually emitted as a highly powerful energy beam that can be aimed at any nearby or distant targets. In prime form, he's also been known to travel at near light speeds, which is verging on speedster level. One of his most notable feats is when he sacrifices himself by trapping himself and Thanos in the Cancerverse. This just shows his immense influence and how far he'd go as a protector of not only Earth, but the cosmos as a whole. At number 2 is Gilgamesh. You know that at least one of the Eternals had to make it onto this list, so here he is. Gilgamesh doesn't have a long run as part of the Avengers, but the short time he gives to them is enough to put him nice and high up on this list. Now, most superheroes tend to have superhuman strength and land somewhere on the scale measured in the amount of tons they can lift usually, but we can basically just throw that scale in the garbage because Gilgamesh is off the charts in his strength stat. His strength level is on par with that of Hercules and Thor, only maybe being usurped by the Hulk himself. But on top of his extreme strength level, he is also capable of flight, energy blasts, and a certain level of energy manipulation, which, when all paired together, makes for a massive powerhouse who beats out many of the other members of the Avengers. Finally, at number 1 is a hero who could have arguably made the part 1 of this video, Captain Marvel. Born as a human, Carol Danvers' DNA is fused with Kree genes, thus turning her into a next level superpowered being. Being able to fly 6 times the speed of sound and having an adept energy manipulation skill, there's no wonder why Captain Marvel is considered one of the most valuable members to ever grace the Avengers. Whether she's destroying asteroids with a single punch or surviving an HLA energy bomb, Captain Marvel seems to be everywhere at once. And she sort of can be, given her insane speed and near omniscience with her flash precognition ability. This power allows her to anticipate events all across the cosmos from wherever she is, which is part of what makes her stand out as one of the foremost protectors of the cosmos. It's also just really helpful in anticipating the moves of her opponents before they make them. And although she does acquire this power when she's turned into binary, there are still remnants of it within her to this day. At number 9 is Vision. Now, if you're more familiar with the MCU than the comics, you may know Vision as more of a tragic character, but Vision is anything but that in the comics, from his power levels to his unique origin story. In Avengers number 57, Vision is still created by Ultron, but his body is formed using Horton cells to replace human anatomy, and his consciousness is made to replicate that of Wonder Man and a little bit of Alex Lipton. Then once he sets off to tear apart the Avengers, he disobeys his orders and instead joins them, becoming one of the leading members as a result. And it's quite the acquisition for the Avengers because Vision is widely considered one of the most powerful of all time. For example, that one time when he increases his density and turns himself into a meteorite to take out Nefaria in Avengers number 166, or how he proves his worthiness of Mjolnir in the MCU, which is a huge moment for any hero, especially in AI. He's also got his extremely powerful energy blasts, his incorporeal form that he can use on command, and immortality. If he isn't ever destroyed, he will basically survive as long as his parts get repaired every once in a while. And plus, he's just a very pragmatic hero, capable of using heightened intelligence to keep emotions out of every decision he makes. At number 8, we have Wonder Man. Where do we begin with this guy? Well, firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Man is another case where he initially fights against the Avengers before coming around and joining them. Wonder Man is essentially immortal, having been resurrected from temporary deaths multiple times and getting stronger each time, might I add. He is an ionic powered being who doesn't age and doesn't need oxygen, food, or water to survive, but that's just speaking to his invulnerability. He's also a shapeshifter with adept teleportation and martial arts abilities. He's known to be in the 100-ton strength class, putting him up there in power levels with the Sentry, the Hulk, and Thor. Oh yeah, and he can't be infected by a symbiote, which is great news for the Avengers, who would basically be done for if that happened. Some of his more impressive feats include knocking out Hercules, Namor, and Abomination, as well as holding off the Thing, and of course taking down Ultron with his bare hands. The only thing holding Wonder Man back is his inflated ego and insecurities about his powers, as well as his somewhat vague sense of right and wrong at times, but that's not much of a downside considering how powerful this Avenger is. At number 6, we have one of the most important members of the Avengers and my personal favorite, Iron Man. What could I say way to try and convince you of Iron Man's placement on this list? Well, my favorite way of describing Iron Man's sheer power level is that it's technically uncapped. Tony Stark's biggest trait is his immense intellect, which shouldn't necessarily be considered on a list about power as a standalone ability. But when that intellect is able to produce the Iron Man suit, the War Machine suit, and every iteration of Spider armor, as well as not to mention the Hulk Buster armor, it surely should be considered. So I say that his power potential doesn't have a ceiling only because if he's not the most powerful on this list right now, there's plenty of room for him to improve down the line with his inventions. But as he stands, he's still got his own AI system Jarvis, integrated into an all-powerful Iron Man armor which is outfitted with near endless ballistics and energy weaponry. And I'd argue that Iron Man has a certain level of omnipotence as well, because his systems are always tapped into external sources that support him in battle, like drones or even backup armor upgrades on the fly. Okay, at number 5 is Black Panther. T'Challa is not to be messed with, and it's not just because most of his gear is outfitted with all the vibranium anyone could ever hope for. He's also got a level of dexterity and stealth that brings his combat abilities to another level. This could be seen in the comics when he's able to take down Namor not once, but twice, or when he also finds a way to take out the Silver Surfer, which is an insanely impressive feat on its own. But what puts Black Panther above Iron Man for me is that he's got a similar intellect and employs it almost more impressively at times. He's able to create similarly ingenious pieces of technology to Stark, and much of the time totally on the fly. Like the one time when he creates a device on the spot that blocks Thanos' synapses in his mind, knocking him out there and then, at least for a time. But this is a big moment that shouldn't be ignored. Considering he's capable of this level of technological aptitude, and he's a superpowered being on top of it, it just gives him that extra edge over Iron Man for me. And that comes from a huge Iron Man stan. Although Black Panther is in my top 3 as well. At number 4 we have Hercules. I want to acknowledge that Ares could also easily hold this spot, but I figured that the list only had room for one Greek god. And having been teased in Thor Love and Thunder's post-credit sequence, it's looking like Hercules is set to appear in an upcoming MCU project, and it's about time. Hercules is one of the few characters that has ever been able to contend on an even keel as Thor, which I think speaks to how powerful he is in the comics. Son of the god of lightning, Zeus, Hercules is known as the god of strength, which should be enough to put him on this list to begin with. But what could also convince you would be, I don't know, that one time when he picks up all of Manhattan while facing off against Thor, or the time when he destroys the Thor clone in Civil War, which acts as a turning point for Cap's army. If that's not enough to convince you though, Hercules is also known to run at speeds above 100 miles per hour. Even though most people associate Hercules with Greek mythology, he has a very lengthy run with the Avengers and proves himself as one of their most powerful members ever. At number 3 we have the one and only God of Thunder, Thor. These top 3 were tough for me to rank because they're such popular and fluctuating characters in both the comics and the MCU. But it's fair to say that Thor takes a spot in the top 3 based on his insane influence on the Avengers, as well as his sheer power potential. Originally known to be the only other being in the Marvel Universe to contend with the Hulk, Thor has only grown stronger over the years, with plenty of other heroes filling the gap between him and the Worldbreaker. And some of these feats that he has attained have been due to his extremely lengthy existence, having been a practicing warrior for millennia. Using his belt of strength and his hammer Mjolnir, Thor is also one of the best equipped heroes in the universe. He is powerful enough to resist the gravitational pull of a neutron star, knock out the Phoenix Force with one blow, and famously take out Mangog and Thanos in back-to-back fights. I could stand here and pretend to convince you. The real fans know that the only argument here is that maybe Thor could be placed even higher on the list. That would only knock out our number 2 spot, Scarlet Witch, and I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because this hero is just an absolute powerhouse for the Avengers. She is the daughter of Magneto, or maybe not as of recently, but I liked it better when she was, and she possesses an extremely dangerous and powerful set of magical abilities. Known to be able to manipulate reality on a cosmic scale, Scarlet Witch's powers have grown exponentially since her introduction in the X-Men number 4 in 1964. She has famously eliminated the powers of 99% of all mutants with one whisper during the House of M storyline, which is an absolutely insane feat of power. But she's also shown that she's possibly capable of creating whole universes on command, which brings her to yet another crazy level of power. Some people might argue to put her further back on the list because of her volatility as a hero, or arguably an anti-hero, but I honestly think that her powers are just too impressive to be outweighed by her struggles to control them. In fact, I almost put her at number 1, but the top spot had to go to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange started off as a character that might not have presented as much of a powerhouse, but over time he has proven himself to be the most valuable member that the Avengers have ever had. He is capable of bending time and space on command with adept precision and can detect threats from extreme distances in space and time before they even occur. And if you take issue with this number 1 placement, just think of the scale of the forces he's faced with within his own storylines. He has to protect the world from the likes of Dormammu, Nightmare, and Urthona, among many other godlike demons. But what really makes Doctor Strange the most powerful out of all the Avengers is that he doesn't need to contend with opposition on the plane of reality that they come to him in. He is able to view the future and decide on how he wants it to play out before changing the fabric of reality to control any outcome he's faced with. The only reason that I could imagine someone might keep him from the number 1 spot these days is that he's known to have been nerfed quite a bit in the last 20 years, but even today I'd still argue that his power set puts him in the top spot.
Number 10, Starbrand. Starbrand isn't so much a singular person as it is a power in and of itself. Right now, the current Starbrand in the 616 universe is Brandy Selby, daughter of Suzanne Selby, who became the Starbrand after the one before her, Kevin Connor, passed away. The Avengers stepped in and had to help Suzanne deliver little Brandy, an act that caused Suzanne to pass away and attach the Starbrand to Brandy. Since Brandy's birth, she's used the Starbrand to fly and survive without oxygen and in the vacuum of space, and she can use extremely powerful energy blasts that can take down multiple people at once. But the Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that can influence human behavior to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. On Earth 541, the Starbrand bearer has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedoms. Number 9, Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature, enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow. Her master of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to her 2 little antennae she has coming out of her head. It doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life where she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts, form energy shields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. Number 8. Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat and was given powers tied to her costume, but that all changed when she became Tigra, mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the Cat People, which is a very silly name, but was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages. Now before you laugh at her for looking kinda silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some awesome abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons, with her leg muscles allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of where you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, and her sense of smell lets her track people. More than that, she can even detect subtle alterations in the composition of perspiration that reflects mood or emotions and is highly sensitive to pheromones. Her claws and fangs can cut through steel, and like Mantis, she is an empath able to enhance and control emotions to a degree.
At number 7, we have the world breaker himself, the Incredible Hulk. Need I expound on this one? The Hulk has always been known as one of the Avengers' most valuable assets, and even with his weakness being that he lacks control over his actions, his power level alone outbalances that shortcoming by a long shot. Besides, part of what makes the Hulk so important to the team is that he's unhinged. If he actually had a conscience, it would be argued that he wouldn't exude quite as much strength at times, considering a lot of it is confused rage induced. In Marvel Comics Presents number 52, he destroys an asteroid twice the size of Earth, he tears the fabric of reality in The Incredible Hulk number 126, and during Secret Wars he holds up a mountain range on his own to protect his fellow Avengers. And as often as he causes problems for Earth, he has also protected it from cataclysmic events many times, like the time when he prevents an earthquake with his own hands. This hero is probably the strongest on the list in terms of brute fighting strength, and if we'd made this list about 20 years ago, he'd probably be in the top 3. But these days there are just more to come that simply deliver just a little bit more than sheer brute strength. Like Hyperion, who's in our number 6 spot. Known by some as the Superman of Marvel, Hyperion has a ridiculously impressive power set and a very complex motivation for heroism. Although there are plenty of different iterations of this hero, the one most commonly known to be an Avenger originates from a recently destroyed universe. And what's more is that he has to relive this experience in his mind repeatedly due to his non-linear light-based memory. This is important to note on a list about power because it really explains why this hero puts so much into his work as a superhero, to create happier memories for him to experience in perpetuity. But an even better gauge for his powers are his feats as a hero, such as the time when he lifts Atlantis, yes the city, and destroys it single-handedly before beheading Namor in 2016 Squadron Supreme number 1. He's also got extreme speed while flying, traveling from Nevada to Sumatran and back in less than a minute. That's speed that could contend with some speedsters, and Hyperion does it while flying. At number 5 is Blue Marvel. A very underrated and underdiscussed hero given his power levels, Blue Marvel has a stint as an Avenger, and no one really talks about it. Known to be as powerful as Thor and the Hulk, Blue Marvel has redirected enormous asteroids single-handedly, as well as sending Sentry into space with one punch. But he isn't known only for his brute strength. His matter manipulation is equally powerful and impressive, giving him the ability to transmute matter at a molecular level and harness antimatter at will. This makes him an excellent support member to the Avengers as well, giving him the ability to heal the wounds of his allies. And let's be honest, a hero adept with molecular manipulation powers doesn't often also have the strength to one-shot Ultimate Hulk or three-shot King Hyperion and contend against the Avengers after just returning from a 40-year retirement. Nor do they have Reed Richards saying that they might be 3 times smarter than Dr. Doom. But Blue Marvel does. He has all of this under his belt. There's just nobody out there quite like him. Other than maybe the guy who sits in our number 4 slot, Sentry. Although he is known to be one of the more troubled and self-sabotaging heroes in the Marvel Universe, Sentry's insane power levels and diverse power set still rank him at our number 4 slot on this list. Much like Blue Marvel, Sentry has Hulk-like strength as well as transmutation abilities, except he also deals with psionic energy as well as light manipulation. And he can also regenerate his molecules from nothing, meaning that he will always exist unless someone finds a very crafty way of combating or undoing this ability. The only caveat to all this is that Sentry has this evil alter ego called the Void, who is known to be even more powerful than he is, and is known as the being to have destroyed Asgard in the Siege storyline. And even though Sentry has struggled with mental illness, causing his abilities and heroic feats to be rather inconsistent, the fact of the matter is that Sentry is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, not just the Avengers.
Number 3, Circe. Circe is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race throughout the ages. which is similar to, but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Cersei's body is augmented by cosmic energy, and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to anything which isn't stronger than the cosmic energy that augmented them in the first place. Cersei has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25. Her telekinesis also allows Cersei to fly at about 760 miles per hour. She can project cosmic energy in heat, light, or concussive blasts. She has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools. She can teleport, but hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is a super cool ability. Those are all the powers we don't see in the Eternals movie though, because arguably the ability that she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Cersei to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wishes. Number 2. Darkhawk. The coolest name for the strangest mashup of ideas. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney. When he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, he stumbled upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Darkhawk armor. Now this ancient Shi'ar magical armor is very cool, and it gave its user quite the set of abilities. Obviously the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes are all here in excess, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse, and could manifest mutations from Chris's body at will. The armor had glider wings that allowed him to fly on air currents, but he gained an upgrade that brought his flight to interstellar distances and speeds. Chris is able to heal from even the worst of wounds by just switching back to his human body. The armor can generate force fields, generate dark energy blasts, give its user enhanced vision, and can switch to a bunch of different modes, going transparent, doubling up its armor, and fighting with even stronger weapons. The problem for Darkhawk is that he has this very Iron Man vibe that kind of mixes with a Wolverine vibe due to his fist claws. It also mixes with a bit of a Spider-Man vibe as well, and it all just didn't really allow him to stay relevant past the 90s. And in at number 1 is Hawkeye. Okay, look, hear me out. Yes, Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in a few seconds. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible. I don't know how you train that, but there you go. He is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He is an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but listing off his abilities isn't really going to give you a proper understanding. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3, number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. In Hawkeye Volume 4, number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. At number 10 is Bishop. Lucas Bishop is a mutant from the far-flung dystopian possible future where Hope Summers wiped out millions of human beings, resulting in the hunting and policing of mutants by Sentinels under control of the government. From just this alone, his knowledge of possible future events, he has a large amount to offer, but Lucas Bishop also served as a member of the XSE mutant police force, giving him a whole whack of experience using his abilities. Speaking of which, Bishop has the very useful mutant ability of energy absorption, allowing him to absorb the majority of types of energy including magic, sound, light, psionic, psychic, and the list goes on and on, with no clearly defined limit as of yet. The energies he absorbs can be either environmental or directed towards him as attacks. He can then store or project that energy from his body in different ways, whether in the form of concussive blasts, energy rays, explosions, fire, plasma, and again the list goes on and on. But his favorite use is by projecting the energy out of his XSE weaponry. The nature of his powers makes it difficult to damage him with energy-based attacks, and almost any attack to be honest, giving him nigh invulnerability. But it also enables him to work well with any energy-using teammates. Bishop can also store the absorbed energy within his personal reserves, whereupon the energy increases his strength, speed, stamina, and healing abilities. He is highly underutilized, especially recently, and I think think that's gotta change. Alright, at number 9 is Polaris. Lorna Dane is not just a green Scarlet Witch, okay? In fact, she is the real, legit daughter of the anti-hero magnetic powerhouse Magneto. She's been manipulated, used, and been the victim of villains like Mesmero, Eric the Red, the Marauders, Zaladane, and Apocalypse. But she has been a member of the X-Men and more recently is a key member of the newest version of the team. She's always been prominent, but I think a little overlooked in comparison to others, which is a shame. She's actually quite powerful. As the daughter of Magneto, Polaris actually has pretty much exactly the same abilities as him. She can control and manipulate magnetic fields, allowing her to create force fields, fly on the Earth's magnetic field, emit magnetic concussive pulses that can overload and short-circuit electrical systems. She's able to manipulate the natural iron within the blood of living organisms, allowing her to reverse the flow of an entire crowd's blood in order to render them unconscious. She controls metal and magnetism just like her father, but hasn't had as much experience, so her potential has not been fully realized as of yet. Number 8. Forge. Forge has been an important member of the X-Men and mutant community for a long time. But for some reason, he always seems kind of unused, at least to me. He's almost like the X-Men's version of Q from James Bond. His mutant ability is that he is an intuitive genius. He can visually perceive mechanical energy, quote unquote, in action. He can just understand how something works by looking at it, as easily as breathing, for example. This power allows Forge to instinctively know and understand the potential and functional operations of any machine or technological device in his visual range. It's a skill that, combined with his natural intelligence, allows him to conceive, design, and build mechanical devices and operate, modify, and disassemble existing technology to create countermeasures for it. It's pretty cool. It's almost hard to explain how this is a power, but it is. It's allowed him to subconsciously invent and construct something where someone else would have to think about it, design it, and then create it. He's been able to just do it, and then deconstruct it later to figure out how it actually works. He's created cybernetic systems, sophisticated holograms, and elaborate computer and fiber optic systems, as well as time travel devices. His potential is vast, and that's before you take into account his magical affinity. Number 7. Forearm. Michael McCain is the mutant under the name Forearm. An exceedingly clever name, as this mutant's ability is that Forearm has 4 arms. Oh boy. Alongside his 4 arms ability, Forearm also has access to super strength, stamina, and durability. Because honestly, Forearms isn't exactly gonna save him in the majority of mutant conflicts. That being said though, I would kill to have 2 extra arms. I just can't help but imagine how useful that would be. Add to the fact that your arms are super strong, not only can you make a peanut butter jelly sandwich while texting your friends and petting a cat or something, but you can also trade 2 extra fists worth of punches with some heavy hitting mutants who only get 2 hands. For Michael, when his powers are used in unison with his extra limbs, he is a formidable close combat specialist, able to hold his own against some of X-Men's own powerhouses like Rockslide. He was a founding member of the Mutant Liberation Front, and he is now happily living on Krakoa. Number 6. Nature Girl. Although Lin Lee started off at Jean Grey's school for higher learning, after she witnessed some of the horrible things humanity is doing to the earth and to nature, she would instead become an eco-terrorist, fighting back against humanity, which makes sense given her powers. Nature Girl's powers are directly connected to the natural world, so she can communicate, influence, manipulate, and control nature, living beings, except I guess not humans or mutants, plants, natural phenomena like the weather and geology of the earth, and the matter and energy of which all these things are composed of. Now that statement alone kind of encompasses a lot of different stuff. She can call upon animals and ally herself with them. She can make plants grow, move, and attack people. She can control the weather to a degree and heal nature to a degree too. She was on the run from Wolverine for a while and was able to get away from him a few times using her abilities. And she looks totally awesome wielding the Krakoan cudgel with her big antlers and the goat legs and stuff. Super cool. Number 5. Miranda. The only reason this character is on this list is because a lot of people have not heard of her. She doesn't even have a last name. Miranda had powers that appeared at first to be cosmic level reality warping. Warping on a level the Beast created the term Omicron level mutant to call her. He thought she was able to manipulate reality while somehow completely avoiding any damage to space or time, like when she has stopped the Juggernaut in his path by making a well appear right below him that he was falling down millions of miles. But what Miranda's mutant power actually was control over all of Marvel's continuity. She is the one who has been keeping all of Marvel's mutants young. She's the reason the old Nick Fury got replaced by Samuel L. Jackson, and she's the reason Bucky Barnes came back as the Winter Soldier. At least, she is in this alternate universe of Earth TRN 656. The one from X-Men Worst X-Man Ever. I'm just kind of curious to see if this ultra powerful mutant will ever show up in other stories or even the 616 universe at all. Number 4. Banshee. Sean Cassidy has been around for one heck of a long time in the world of Marvel's mutant community, and he has done some pretty prominent things, but his power doesn't seem like it's all that impressive, and he is kind of looked over when thinking about the mutants, but he shouldn't be. Sean has acoustic kinesis, an ability he does many cool things with. Primarily, Sean emits a sonic scream. Now the sound waves from this sonic scream have shattered solid objects, cracked skulls, and even liquefied people. But he has done so much more with this ability. He can ride the sound waves he creates using his suit to be able to fly at subsonic speeds. He can create sonar by sending out a pure signal note and listening to the returning sound. He can tighten the sound waves around himself and others to create sonic shields. And more than that though, he has been shown to affect the fluid inside people's ears with his sonic screams, being able to set them off balance and even render them unconscious. One ability that had me raising an eyebrow is the fact that Banshee can even subtly influence people's subconscious mind by changing the tones and vibrations of his voice, effectively using hypersonic suggestions and persuasive abilities. Don't sleep on Banshee, people.
Number 10. Kristoff and Kadira Von Doom. Kristoff and Kadira Von Doom are the children of Storm and Doctor Doom. They come from the novel series X-Men: The Chaos Engine, which is actually a trilogy wherein we explore what would happen if 3 great villains took control of the Marvel Universe, creating their own version of a perfect world using the Cosmic Cube. It starts off with Doom's variation on this world. In this reality, Doctor Doom has made Storm his wife, and she rules by his side as his Empress. The union of these powerful characters produces 2 children, Kristoff and Kadira. We can assume, of course, being the children of both Doom and Storm, that they would be physically, mentally, and demonstrably powerful when it came to their abilities, especially being raised by these 2 powerhouses. Also, if I wasn't clear about this is an alternate reality, so if you're like, when did this happen? It is not main continuity. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more children of the X-Men, they have a lot of kids if we, surf through the multiverse, so we could do it for you. If you want that part 3, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Nocturne. Nocturne is the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Obviously, not from the main continuity. In fact, Talia Wagner is known for being a part of a multiversal hero team, the Exiles. Nocturne is from the alternate reality of Earth 2182. In fact, back on her home reality, which first appeared in Millennial Visions, Talia is also known as a member of the X-Men team, fighting alongside her father, Nightcrawler, who is actually their field leader. She is a low-level telepath with incredible superhuman agility skills, the ability to wall crawl, and the ability to fire powerful brimstone hex energy bolts, something inherited from both her father and her mother. Nocturne's physical appearance is also similar to her father's, a bit demonic looking, and of course, blue. All my blue X-Men. Top 10 blue X-Men. Actually, I feel like there's a lot of X-Men that are blue. Or mutants that are blue, maybe? There's a lot of blue mutants, for sure. I don't know about X-Men team members. Number 8. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy Hudson is the son of Wolverine from the alternate reality of Earth 1610. His powers are similar to his father's, but in this reality, they're believed to work a little bit differently. As opposed to just being insane healing powers, Jimmy's power set in this universe as a mutant is believed to be based more in survival. So these powers aren't necessarily just about healing, but survival instincts and capability, meaning that Jimmy is just much better at surviving and evolving to survive than anyone else alive on the planet. And I mean that because in this reality, Wolverine eventually dies, so really Jimmy is the only one left alive who's really good at surviving. Jimmy Hudson has also been bonded to a poison before and gained control of his poison, which are basically alien-like beings resembling symbiotes in look and abilities, but ultimately a different alien race themselves, called poisons. So yeah. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine and Magneto's wife, Magda Lencher, although Wolverine urges him through a letter when the truth of his connection to Jimmy is revealed that he actually shouldn't focus too much on, who his biological parents are. Jimmy was raised by adoptive parents. His dad actually served served with Logan in the war and agreed to look after Jimmy in his father's place, even giving the young boy his own family name. Hudson. Number 7. Esme. Esme is one of the main Stepford Cuckoos. Well, I mean, I guess they're all pretty main, but you know what I mean. She's probably one of the most well-known, if we're talking offhand, about how many of the Cuckoos you can name. Esme and the other Cuckoos are basically like the children of Emma Frost, although as I've said before, not children that she had consensually. And I didn't say that before in this list, but if you've heard me talk about the Stepford Cuckoos and their relation to Emma, yeah. Instead, these were lab babies basically made from Emma's eggs that were stolen from Emma while she was in a comatose state. Esme, like the other Cuckoos, is kind of like a genetic clone as well as a child of Emma's, and Emma actually does consider the Cuckoos to be like her daughters. She treats them as though they were her own flesh and blood, and often her own responsibility, kinda stepping in to like play mom sometimes, although she does give them freedom to make their own mistakes. I guess what I mean is Emma isn't known for being like a controlling kind of parent. She's like, I'm here when you need me, otherwise you do you. More recently in the comics, Esme, known for her diamond form and powerful telepathic abilities, teamed up and primarily dated young Cable. Well, technically all the Cuckoos were dating him at one point, though I would say Esme was basically the main squeeze of young Cable, and the sister that he was most taken by while he was dating all of them. And if you're like, whoa, how did that happen? The Stepford Cuckoos, they share things because they're kind of like a hive mind. So they're like, we'll just all date this person. It's cool. Also Krakoa. Everyone's dating everyone. Number 6. Akihiro. Akihiro is the son of Wolverine and his wife Itsu. Unfortunately, before Akihiro was even born, his life took a turn for the worse. Along with inheriting his father's powers, I think he also inherited some of his tragic luck. Wolverine has the worst luck, I think. His mother Itsu was killed before she could give birth to him, assassinated. The child was believed dead, but in reality he had been cut from her womb and possibly, due to his inherited healing powers, miraculously survived. Although, that's not clear, because usually your powers don't manifest until puberty, but sometimes your powers manifest when you're in the womb. I mean, look at Professor X with Cassandra Nova. Apparently that's a thing that happened. Akihiro would grow up and become a pawn of the villain known as Romulus. For most of his life, he'd also be known as Daken, a cruel nickname given to him when he was a child, being raised by his adoptive parents. The nickname was given to him because of his mixed race appearance, being part American and part Japanese. Though to be clear, his parents weren't the ones that gave it to him. It was people around his parents. Akihiro's powers are similar to Wolverine's, though his bone claws are a little bit different in terms of placement and appearance. Like his father, Akihiro is also known for being a skilled fighter as well. The apple does not fall far from the tree when it comes to fighting abilities. Number 5. Xandra Naramani. Xandra is Professor X's daughter, who is created out of his genetic material and that of his lover's genetic material, the Shi'ar Magistrix Lilandra Naramani, after both of them were believed dead. As such, Xandra grew up to become Shi'ar royalty and also spent a good amount of her life hunted because of this, with various parties attempting to use her for their own means. Xandra is an extremely gifted telepath. She can manipulate others' minds, read minds, and can create hyper-realistic telepathic illusions. Number 4. Ruby Summers. She was the ex-offspring used in our oh-so-clickable thumb for the part 1 to this list, and although she was on my extended list for that part 1, my long brainstorm that I came up with, I didn't get around to talking about her because I kind of reached a point where there were too many Summers children on that list, and I was like, I don't want to make this a top 10 children of Cyclops. We got that list, and also that's not what this list is. What can I say? Sykes got strong genes. That's why Mr. Sinister is so obsessed after all and is known as the #1 fan of the Summers Club. Scott Summers is Ruby's dad in the alternate reality she hails from, and Emma Frost is her mother. This makes Ruby fairly powerful, not at the level of Hope or X-Man, but still pretty impressive. She's also super cool looking, which is an added bonus. Ruby hails from the alternate Earth of 1191, the home reality of famous X-Men ally Bishop. Ruby is also capable of emitting optic blasts like her dad and his brothers, but she has more control over when and how she emits these blasts, unlike her dad who's like, I literally need a visor. Ruby also comes with her Ruby form, which like her mother's Diamond form, grants her invulnerability and pretty much immortality. Number 3. Olivier Raven. Olivier Raven is legally known as Olivier Olivier Lebeau, and is one of the alternate reality children of Gambit and Rogue. Honestly, I feel like there are not enough of these kids out in the multiverse. I don't know if that's just me. For a couple as famous as Gambit and Rogue, I mean, you would think that we'd have a lot more kids from them, at least through the multiverse. Though admittedly, I'm not quite sure that Rogue and Gambit are really the kid having type, at least from what I've seen in the main continuity. They seem pretty content with just having their fur babies right now. So maybe they just aren't super into having kids as a family. Olivier hails from the reality of Earth 41001, the reality of Gen Next, a group Ollie is part of. He has powers similar to his mother's, except he has better control over them and is able to choose when and how much power, life energy, and memories he absorbs via physical contact, or doesn't absorb in cases where he just, wants to make physical contact without using his powers. He can also absorb powers on a more permanent level, although he has less control, it seems, over when this happens. Like his father, he also seems to have some charm-based powers. Either that, or he's just charming. Number 2, Proteus. Proteus is the son of Moira McTaggart, who before I would count more as like an ex-ally, but with recent revelations, we can definitely consider her a member in the same way we might consider someone like Charles Xavier. It turns out that Moira herself was a mutant this whole time, possessing unique reincarnation powers. She has also been known for being a leader and teacher of X-Men groups before, including the time when she led a team that Professor X then recruited, sending them into Krakoa to rescue the original X-Men. Not Krakoa as we know it now, but Krakoa as it was back in the day when it was like a monster island. Proteus is Kevin McTaggart, son of Joseph and Moira McTaggart. He is currently one of the 5 on Krakoa, and his powers as part of that team are mainly used to warp reality, allowing the non-viable eggs that Egg, formerly known as Gold Balls, produces to become viable for life. These eggs are then used to grow new versions of fallen mutants. Proteus is an Omega level mutant who requires hosts to survive. Initially, Kevin had a body, but now he's basically just pure energy. The hosts he controls and feeds off of eventually are exhausted and killed by that energy drain, making him not just a powerful psionic mutant, but also a powerful energy vampire as well, unintentionally. Number 1, Legion. Legion is the son of Professor Charles Xavier that was conceived when he had a love affair with Gabrielle Haller, which is where Legion gets his legal last name, as his given name is David Haller. Legion is so powerful because he suffers from a severe dissociative identity disorder, where he has more than 100 personas residing within him. Each persona has a number, many have names, and they each have their own specific power set that show up whenever they take over. Because of this, there is almost nothing that Legion isn't capable of. He can manipulate matter and time. We've seen him time travel and completely warp reality as a result of his possible abilities. He also has some pretty powerful hair, which I gotta say, I'm happy that he still rocks even now in the current modern day comics. He's still got that sweet hair. So tall. Number 10, Van El. Van El is the imaginary son of Superman that he is made to believe he had in the Superman Annual from 1985, Annual number 11, from the original Superman series. Superman ends up being put in a trance by a plant that starts to kind of attack him as part of a villainous plot. While he's in this trance, he sees what life would be like if he had remained on Krypton and grew up there. He ends up married and with a son named Van El and a daughter. We don't see Van El's abilities when it comes to powers, but he is a Kryptonian with both his mom and his dad being from that planet, which means that on Earth, he would probably be at least at Superman levels. Unfortunately, he is just a dream, and Superman heartbreakingly realizes that this world is false and he must wake up. It's actually a pretty sad issue, to be real. This story is like tragic. Number 9, Sir-El. Sir-El isn't a real child of Superman, although at first we actually thought she was one. Sir-El appeared to be the daughter of Lois Lane and Supes from a distant future. She even looked a lot like both of her parents and demonstrated similar powers, but in the end we learned that she was simply created as part of a plot to deliver the Yes virus, which would help Brainiac take over the world. She was created by combining Kryptonian DNA with a human, grafting the DNA sort of over top of her human self. Originally, she was a human known as Mia, and when she learned of her true origin, she destroyed herself in order to save the world. Sir-El was also implanted with all the memories of her parents and being raised by them, so to her, her life as their daughter had felt very real, despite the fact that we learned she was really a fake. Fake daughters, I feel like, should still count, especially if they have memories of being raised. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving my super comfy sweater, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And if you don't like my comfy sweater, don't tell me, because I don't want to know. It's really comfy, okay guys? I got it for $5 at Value Village, don't judge me. Number 8. Superwoman. Superwoman is Kara Kent, the daughter of Superman and Lois Lane from the alternate reality of Earth 3839. This is the reality we explore in John Byrne's series Superman and Batman Generations. Here, Kara is seen as having the same level of power as Superman, at least initially. Eventually we learn though that Kara really only possesses half the strength of her dad's powers. Oh dear. This means that although she has worked alongside her dad as his sidekick under the name Supergirl for years, she is no match when her evil brother shows up to destroy her and her wedding. Kara was becoming a hero all her own, taking up the mantle of Superwoman and joining forces with her partner in crime fighting and her partner in romance, Bruce Wayne Jr., Batman's son. The two were married, but Kara's brother, manipulated by Lex Luthor to believe that both his father and Kara had actually taken away the powers that he should have been born with, shows up to the wedding and kills Kara shortly thereafter. Number 7. Supergirl. This is the imaginary daughter of Superman, but she still likely exists in some alternate reality, because technically every imagining is like an alternate reality, if that makes sense. So she exists probably somewhere out in the multiverse other than just Superman's dream, and so I'm gonna count her. Also, the dream featuring her in retrospect to the rest of the universe is like really tragic, so I feel like for that reason alone, we should just talk about it, because it's a pretty cool moment in Injustice, because tragic things are cool when they are safely contained in fictional worlds and can make you feel emotions without actually having to deal with the consequences of the tragedies that the emotions come from. Supergirl is Lara Lane Kent, the daughter Lois and Clark would have had in the event that Joker and Harley hadn't made Superman believe Lois was Doomsday and made him kill her. In this very different world, Superman and his daughter, Supergirl, are both still heroes. Her powers are very similar to her father's, and while she isn't quite as experienced as he is, she is still on a similar level when it comes to what she's capable of. Number 6. Carol and Jane Kent. Carol and Jane Kent are the daughters of Superman and Lois from the comic series Superman Secret Identity. We learn of their powers in the final issue, issue number 4, which acts as the conclusion to our tale as Clark moves into his twilight years and his kids mostly take over. Initially, he and Lois weren't sure if they had any powers at all, but many years later they find out that their kids' powers did manifest. It happened to Carol and Jane, their twin daughters, in their teenage years. As adults, they are initially a little less experienced than Clark, but eventually go on to replace him as he leaves more and more of the heroics up to them. By the end of the series, I'd say power level wise they are about at the same place as their dad, or perhaps even a little bit stronger than he was in his prime. Also, Superman's Secret Identity is just a really well written story, so if you haven't checked out this miniseries, I highly recommend you go and give it a gander. Also, I can't believe it's from the early 2000s. Like, to me, it feels much more like modern day, like now, not like early 2000s. I mean that as a compliment. Number 5. Supergirl. Seriously, get ready for a list full of Supergirls, because unsurprisingly, a lot of Superman's kids take up that mantle. This Supergirl is Lara Kent from Frank Miller's Dark Knight Alternate Earth, aka Earth 31. Here, Lara is the daughter of Superman and Wonder Woman. She stands out due to her very blue hair. Being a hybrid baby, she ends up inheriting both her parents' powers, making her super powerful and an immensely skilled fighter, having been trained by her mother in the way of the Amazons. One thing that makes her unique as well in comparison to some of the other super kids out there is that she believes her powers make her better than non-powered people, and she actually strives to one day rule over the non-powered people of Earth. A little bit villainous there, Lara. I mean, she's not gonna do it because she's like, I know my dad's like, these people, we gotta protect them. But she's definitely thinking about it. Number 4. Superman. Jonathan Kent is the natural-born son of Lois Lane and Clark Kent, aka Kal-El, Superman, from the main continuity. He was born during the events that caused a reset of the universe when the New 52 basically came about. He and his family were relocated to the New 52 Prime Earth, even though they were originally from New Earth, meaning that for a while we had 2 Supermans on planet Earth, although one was operating in secret, that one being John's dad. John would become good friends with another super son, Damian Wayne, Batman's semi-natural born son. Well, not really. His whole existence is also an interesting story, but enough of that. He's definitely Batman's biological son at least, so we can count that. Damian and John initially didn't get along but would find common ground and then become the best of friends. Of course, then John went to space and grew up rapidly, and currently in the comics, he has also taken up the mantle of Superman after his father, now that he's back on Earth. John's powers are at a very similar scope and level, but as a human Kryptonian hybrid, he apparently does have the potential to become even more powerful than Clark. Hybrid babies are the best babies in terms of superpowers. Number 3, the Golden Child. This version of John Kent comes to us from the alternate Earth of Earth 31. Yep, we're going back to the Dark Knight universe of Frank Miller. In one of his latest Dark Knight universe stories, it was revealed that baby John, who is now a young child here, also born of Superman and Wonder Woman, is actually something completely new when it comes to his power levels. Also, he doesn't have blue hair. No blue hair for John. His sister Lara even suggests that while she agrees with her father about teaching John, that they should soon be prepared to actually learn from him because he's that powerful. At the end of Dark Knight Returns the Golden Child, we see the true extent of John's powers when he takes on Darkseid, calling him basically an old fart the entire time, as he defeats him pretty easily. Darkseid attempts to use his Omega beams only to have young John swallow that power, absorbing it, and then firing it back with his neutron vision powers. Totally unique powers. John is also able to protect his sister Lara in the fight, making her intangible somehow before both her and he fade away, seemingly transforming both of them into some type of energy? I think that's what happened. That's kind of a weird comic, but yes, it did happen. Number 2, Hyperman. Hyperman is the son of Superman and Wonder Woman who comes from the reality belonging to the Kingdom Come story and follow-up story, The Kingdom. In that story, little baby John Kent is kidnapped by Gog. He ends up being rescued by 2 different versions of his parents and his godfather Batman, but ends up with himself in the end, his future self. The hero, Hyperman, who also rules and guards over all of Hyper Time. Hyperman raises the child himself, so raises himself, continuing the circle and pretty much guaranteeing that John Kent will grow up to become Hyperman, a time-traveling, dimension-hopping hero, because I assume that's how Hyperman was raised, by himself, and then when that one becomes older he'll have to raise another one. I feel like this is a time loop and it will never end. Number 1, Supergirl. This version of Supergirl is Ariella Kent, the daughter of Linda Danvers' Supergirl and Superman of Earth 1. Yeah, it might sound weird to think that Supergirl and Superman got it on and ended up having a kid together, but remember, this is Linda Danvers' Supergirl. No relation to Supes, and it's also a Superman from another alternate reality because it's Earth 1 Superman, who is therefore even further removed to any kind of relation or affiliation with Linda. Ariella Kent ended up kind of being time or reality displaced due to continuities needing to be altered and set right, but she is still probably out there somewhere in the cosmos, somewhere in the multiverse, although we haven't seen her in the comics for a long time. Ariella was known for her massive power levels, which as a child she had a hard time actually fully comprehending, meaning that wherever she went she generally caused a lot of destruction. Accidentally. This is what happens when you let a super powerful child fly around space and travel through time without any parental supervision. Ariella was also a hybrid baby, being born part Matrix, aka lab-made semi-alien goo, it's basically what the Matrix is, and part Kryptonian. There's gonna be people that are gonna be like, that's not what the Matrix is. I'm like, no, DC Matrix. Look it up. It was a weird thing, but it happened.
Number 10, Dust. To me, Dust is almost the physical embodiment of the Thanos snap, you know? Anyway, Sora Kadir, aka Dust, is a mutant whose abilities allow her to transform her body into, well, dust. She was born in Afghanistan and was sold into slavery. She displayed her powers when a slave trader tried to remove her kneecap, and she flayed him alive. Yes, she flayed him alive. Once the X-Men got knowledge of Soraya and her abilities, they went looking for her and brought her back to the Academy. Since Dust is a sand morph, she is able to reform her body into a humanoid or some sort of sand form. In this form, she's most resistant to injury and she's difficult to detect telepathically. In this sandstorm form, she's able to hurt her enemies by scouring the flesh from their bones, as well as being able to enter their lungs, hurting their opponents from the inside.
Number 9, Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde's powers are some of the most useful ones around. She can phase through almost anything and as such can travel into some of the most secure locations in the world without any trouble. Not only that, but she can use her phasing abilities in a fight to become completely untouchable, phasing through her opponents or even making her opponents phase momentarily only to become solid once again with something now lodged inside them. Kitty also received a power upgrade from an artifact known as the Black Vortex, which granted her more control over her powers while also increasing their strength to an extent.
Number 8. Magic. Illyana Rasputin, aka Magic, is the younger sister of Colossus and she's got a pretty long list of abilities. She's able to teleport, she can levitate, she has the power of necromancy, she can absorb souls, she's a master swordsman, she possesses a soul sword, and she can astral project. She's got a large skill set, as you can tell. Illyana was trapped in Limbo after being kidnapped by Belasco. During her time in Limbo, this dimension's version of Storm taught Illyana how to use spells and magic, and the cat is the one who taught her how to be a master swordsman that she is today. She also learned dark magic from Chthon, and he's like one of the most powerful demons in the Marvel Universe, so you know she got a good education from him. In a way. At one point, Illyana was even able to extract a piece of her soul to create the Soul Sword, and she used this to take over Limbo. She then returned to Earth and later learned that she was able to cover her body in Eldritch armor when she summons the Soul Sword. So not only is she a powerful sorcerer, but she also has magical armor to boot.
Number 7. Selene. Selene is known for being a powerful energy vampire and is something we don't really talk often enough about on this channel. She was originally known in the comics for being the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club and is an ancient immortal. So how does she stay looking so young? By feeding on the psychic energy of others. But Selene isn't just a vampire, she is also known for her telepathic and telekinetic skills. She has also been shown to demonstrate other powers over the years, like pyrokinesis, and has dabbled in magic as well. Not only that, but the energy she consumes can also be used to reinforce her physical strength and speed.
Number 6. Hope Summers. Basically, Hope Summers is Mutant Jesus. Hope was the first mutant born after the Decimation, the event where Scarlet Witch wiped out all but 198 mutants. When Hope was born, there was a hunt for her. Some believed that she was the mutant messiah, and others believed that she was some sort of antichrist. It was discovered that Hope had the ability to enhance, activate, and mimic the powers of others, and these powers came in handy when she was trusted with the task of going to look for other mutants that they called lights. When finding these other mutants, Hope was able to calm them, stabilize their powers, and even awaken their abilities. On top of all this, it was also revealed that Hope was the new Phoenix, but this force was so unstable and unpredictable, Hope and Scarlet Witch joined forces, said no more Phoenix, and the Phoenix force just dispersed around the world, giving birth to new mutants and restoring the mutant population. So not only is Hope able to influence the X genes of the lights, she was also strong enough to become the new host of the Phoenix Force and then have the power to disperse it around the globe. She's OP. That's just my take on it. She's OP.
Number 5. Emma Frost. On the flip side of the coin from Selene, who we talked about earlier, we have Emma Frost, the White Queen. Emma is also known for being a very powerful telepath, and while she might not be as versatile as Selene, she doesn't need to feed on psychic energy like Selene does. Emma Frost is often referred to as the White Queen from her time as being a part of the Hellfire Club as well. She was the White Queen. See what I'm saying? Emma started out originally as a villain in the comics but didn't stay one for long, eventually reforming and even joining the X-Men team. She's an adept teacher and leader in addition to her powers. She's not only an immensely skilled telepath, but also possesses her diamond form, which makes her almost indestructible in battle. Almost.
Number 4. Rogue. Rogue is the adopted daughter of Mystique, so you already know that if Mystique likes her, there's gotta be something special about her. We covered this in our last collab together, but Mystique isn't really the best mom, so for her to willingly take on the responsibility of being a mom, it's gotta be for a good reason. She's given away too many kids already. Rogue is another super powerful mutant. She has the ability to absorb the life forces, abilities, personality, and other physical characteristics of others through touch. She also had superhuman strength during the period of time that she had absorbed Carol Danvers' powers and personality within her. Now just think about how OP that is. Not only does Rogue have the ability to take the powers of others, but in certain scenarios she's also able to tap into the stolen abilities and use them against her opponent. This happened a lot while she had Carol Danvers still inside her, because not only was she able to tap into her abilities, but Carol was also able to take over Rogue's body in a way when Rogue was unconscious or under a lot of stress. So that's pretty powerful if you ask me. Also, a little side fact for ya. Mystique would have actually been Rogue's biological mom if the character's creator Chris Claremont hadn't left Marvel in 1991. So there you go.
Number 3. Storm. Storm is referred to as a goddess for a good reason. She is a mighty hero who wields influential power over the elements. While this doesn't seem to be a power that Thor often reaches for in the comics despite also possessing that, Storm does not shy away from using her mutant gifts against her enemy. When fighting Storm, you'll want to watch out as it is easy for her to call down a bolt of lightning to strike you at any point. As a child, she also possessed a fear of small spaces known as claustrophobia. In the past, when this fear has been evoked, like when Doom encased her in a form-fitting metal shell, Storm has also been shown to tap into the full potential of her powers, creating storms massive enough to envelop the whole planet. Number 2. Rachel Summers. One of the most powerful and often underrated mutants of all is Rachel Summers. Rachel is the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey from an alternate timeline. She was born with a small part of the Phoenix within her. Instead of her mother perishing after the X-Men's clash with the Shi'ar, Jean lived and married Scott. Together they had Rachel, and because this version of Jean was still bonded with the Phoenix Force at the time, a part of the cosmic entity lives on in Rachel. Aside from her connection to the Phoenix Force, which grants her awesome powers, enhancing both her telekinetic and telepathic powers as well, Rachel also possesses the ability of time manipulation. Her time manipulation powers are complex and can be useful in a variety of ways, such as when we see her use them in 2020's X-Factor in issue 1, to chrono-skip through the time of an object belonging to North Star's sister, Aurora, in order to track her down and investigate her death.
Number 1. Jean Grey. Jean Grey is probably one of the most, or even the most powerful mutants, simply because of her ability to control the Phoenix Force. Going from being X-Men's weakest member to being its strongest, Marvel Girl died, and like a phoenix was reborn as well, Phoenix. In the Uncanny X-Men issues 101 to 108, also known as the Phoenix Saga, we watched as Jean became the powerful mutant Phoenix, and then in Uncanny X-Men 129 to 138, we saw her evolve into Dark Phoenix. The Phoenix Force is the sum of all life in the universe, and it takes hosts through time, so this thing is already pretty damn powerful. But things get cranked up a few notches when Phoenix is corrupted by evil, taking on the new Dark Phoenix persona. In this state, she consumes a star and 5 billion people on a nearby planet. Now if that doesn't scream all-powerful being, then I don't know, man. Ultimately, Jean's personality buried way down there manages to take control, and the Phoenix ends up dying by suicide. Again, even when she's not technically the all-powerful Phoenix, Jean's personality was strong enough to sort of take down the Phoenix from the inside. Also, after her death, she was in the white hot room. Death told Jean that because her spirit was most closely carved from the Phoenix, that she was destined to take on the Phoenix Force. Obviously, it takes a very strong person to be considered a perfect fit for the Phoenix.
Number 10. Prodigy. I feel like a lot of people maybe forgot about Prodigy, as he's been MIA for some time in the comics and was depowered during the events of M-Day. But with the magic of Krakoa and Dawn of X, he was able to return to us, being resurrected and also regaining his powers. 1. Prodigy happens to be a super genius, but this is also because he's a telepath with the ability to basically mimic anyone's skill set and share their knowledge while nearby. This has also been shown in the past to extend to fighting precognition, where he can basically use his abilities to read a person and predict their next move of attack in a battle, which is pretty sweet. He often also builds his own advanced tech, and even when depowered is known to possess a great level of intellect, making him a challenging adversary whether or not he has his mutant abilities. Even as a depowered mutant, you might not want to mess with him. Number 9. Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind, aka Regan Wingard, recently popped back up in the giant-sized Nightcrawler comics and was welcomed into the mutant nation of Krakoa. Some, however, may not know or appreciate her mutant history and background. Just who is Lady Mastermind? Well, she's the daughter of Jason Wingard, aka the original villain known as Mastermind. Her powers take after her father's, allowing her to create realistic illusions projected into her target's minds. While she also has an even lesser known suspected half-sister, Regan's powers are often depicted as being the more powerful between the two, with it even being said that her abilities are even more stronger than her father's. Additionally, she is also fairly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, a skill set her father actually very much lacked. He was hilarious in a fight, he's like a rag doll. Sorry Mastermind. Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is a mutant with the abilities of super strength. I know, very hilarious considering his name. He can grant himself immediate muscle mass that basically allows him to change size and increase his strength when needed. It is yet unknown just how strong Gentle can make himself, and he is also known for being someone who could potentially even take on the Hulk, although he is more of a pacifist, hence his name. Gentle's real name is Nezno Abidemi. I hope I'm saying that right. Nezno Abidemi. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It's a hard one to say. He was raised in Wakanda, but always felt like an outsider because his father was Russian. When his mutant abilities surfaced, it was actually Aurora Monroe Storm, who was queen at the time in Wakanda, who encouraged him to be sent to the Xavier Institute so he could learn how to better control his powers. His vibranium tattoos are also meant to help him to control those powers. Also, vibranium tattoos are super cool, but I think they're also super painful to get, so maybe don't get them. You can't, because it's not a real substance, but still. Number 7. Egg. Fabio Medina might not seem like a powerful mutant based on his ability, but since his rise to the supremely important mutant group known as the Five on Krakoa, he can be considered one of the most important and powerful mutants around. When he combines his powers with that of the Five, he has control over life and death. Originally, the bouncy gold balls that he shot forth from his chest were believed to be nothing special, but it was later revealed that these balls were actually infertile eggs, which could be used in the process of resurrecting new mutants. Number 6. Tempest. Eva Bell is another member of the Five. She has actually appeared in less issues than Egg, if you can believe it, despite the fact that she has a pretty neat power set, and it's been neat since the beginning, which allows her to time travel. Tempest, as she used to be known, was able to control the passage of time in a specific pocket of space. She could also slow time in a current space that she also inhabited, either slowing time around her or creating time bubbles to manipulate time in that bubble, where she could speed it up or slow it down. The only challenge for her has been losing control of her powers, which can cause them to behave unpredictably. Still, controlling time is a pretty impressive and powerful ability to have. Number 5. Empath. Manuel de la Rocha made his first appearance in the original New Mutant series, where he was part of Emma Frost's team known as the Hellions. He's recently reappeared in the newest Hellion series from 2020 and proves just how powerful, but also how sadistic he can be. Empath's power is, you guessed it, empathy, and he can use this power to not only sense others' emotions, but also to control them, in effect manipulating others into doing whatever he wishes them to do. His influence can be subtle, such that someone might not even realize they're being manipulated by him, or it can be more forceful, turning his victims into complete husks of their former selves and bending them fully to his will. Number 4. Vulcan. Vulcan is one of the most powerful mutants around, being an Omega level mutant, skilled in energy manipulation and absorption. Yet he is somehow the lesser known of all the Summers despite his insane power levels. He has also demonstrated the ability to absorb his opponent's powers as well and use them for himself on the rare occasion. Vulcan is the youngest Summers brother, also known as Gabe Summers, and we only learned of his existence in 2006 when he first appeared in the comic X-Men Deadly Genesis issue number 1, and yet he is considered the most powerful of these three. Number 3. Orphan Maker and Nanny. Orphan Maker still remains a relatively mysterious character, though is also one who still proves to be a force to be reckoned with in combat. Orphan Maker is also known as Peter and was part of a plot of Mr. Sinister's originally. However, when Mr. Sinister decided that Peter could not be controlled, he decided to eliminate him. Nanny, an insane cyborg, however, saved him, believing it was her responsibility to look after orphan mutant children and protect them. Although I will say she's got a weird way of going about it. While insane, Nanny was also once a scientist and remains quite intelligent. She actually outfitted Orphan Maker with weapons and a powerful suit to help her in her task. While it's still unclear as to what Orphan Maker's true mutant powers are, and while he seems to still have the mind of a child, probably due to Nanny's manipulation, his suit and weapons make him a formidable foe in combat, and he often uses pixie dust in battle to help Nanny influence and control the minds of their opponents, as she herself is a telepath, but a weak one, so she needs a little bit of help. Needs a little bit of pixie dust. Even during a fight with Cyclops, Scott's optic blasts were unable to harm Orphan Maker while he was in his armor, with Scott's blast simply reflecting off the armor, causing more harm than help, really. Number 2. Trinary. Considering the modern age we live in, Trinary is a pretty powerful mutant. Her abilities allow her to control all tech that is within her line of sight. She has used these powers to move massive sums of money digitally and to manipulate and control Sentinel tech. Currently on Krakoa, Trinary is one of the few technopathic mutants trusted with the important project known as Sleeping Giant, wherein mutants monitor for upcoming advancement in sentinel technology, such as Nimrods or the creation of a mother mold, so that they can ideally put a stop to its development. Project Sleeping Giant were instrumental in helping the X-Men to destroy a mother mold that Orchis was creating before it went online. Number 1. Bailey Hoskins. Now you might think I'm joking here if you happen to know the obscure Bailey Hoskins, but I'm really not. Bailey appeared in his own miniseries titled X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever. He was known for being the worst X-Man ever because his ability only allowed him to do one thing, explode. But he didn't have any regeneration powers, so he basically was a mutant who could never use his powers, otherwise he'd kill himself. It's kind of a one-hit wonder. So how is that powerful? Well, it's also implied in the series that when he does choose to sacrifice himself and blow up the villain of the story, that he makes it possible for Earth-616 to come into existence. So without him, we wouldn't have the main Marvel continuity that we know and love today, potentially. If saving the entire continuity from becoming a dystopian future isn't powerful, then I don't know what is.
Number 3. Firestar. Another pretty powerful mutant who just hasn't had any key moments to speak of. Angelica Jones, also known as Firestar, has the awesome mutant ability of microwave energy manipulation and generation. She uses the Earth's electromagnetic field and converts it into microwave radiation. She also absorbs microwave radiation from her environment and from stars in the galaxy. She can then focus this energy at targets or to do different things. She can set targets on fire, explode them, and even melt them. She's consistently keeping her powers in check because she has the potential to damage the entire Earth and its atmosphere with her abilities, which is why she is even more powerful in space, where she isn't limited by the fragility of the Earth. Out in the cosmos, she has been able to easily produce an attack that injured Garthon Saul when he possessed the energy of the entire Nova Corps. And she also used her abilities to power a massive Shi'ar interstellar transport gate with very little effort. She's even been able to disrupt the psionic powers of others using her own power. Most impressively, Emma Frost. She is still young and learning to use her powers, but she needs to be more than just one of Spider-Man's friends because she is a powerhouse of potential. And at number 2 is Husk. Paige Guthrie is part of a family that has a lineage of mutant abilities. Sam Guthrie, Cannonball, Joshua Guthrie, Icarus, Melody Guthrie, Arrow, and Jebediah Guthrie, who doesn't have a superhero name. Paige's power is a wee bit unorthodox though. She has the ability to shed her skin, and by concentrating on specific chemicals or elemental formulas, she can cause the layer of skin underneath to be a different element or shape or state. She can become any solid that she has studied and can imitate metal, diamond, granite, wood, rubber, and even glass. She's been shown to turn into a sharp-toothed lizard once, which is weird. She doesn't have perfect control over her abilities at this point in time, but when she transforms, she obviously gains different abilities depending on what she turns into. She's granted herself super strength and durability, flame generation, and many other different things. Her shedding lets her get rid of dirt or sweat and even minor injuries, which is both cool and kind of a little freaky, but she has all kinds of potential if she is given the time to properly train her powers. And in at number 1, Megan or Megan or Megagan or however you want to say it. If you were a fan of Excalibur in the late 80s and early 90s, then you'll likely know who Megan is. That's with 2 G's. Megan is a unique character like most of the mutants are. She's a mutant empath with the ability to shapeshift, but she is also an elemental of great power, and she's even got a dose of fairy heritage. Her list of abilities is a little hard to define, as it is with most shapeshifters, and it can even be augmented by her connection with the Earth. She is transformed into a Godzilla-like dragon that could breathe fire, and even a werewolf-like creature with all the enhancements that can afford. Megan has also shown through her environmental connection and mutant empath abilities to be able to adapt to situations and also to the emotions of those around her. So for example, she can grow gills and fur, or become prettier when those around her think she is ugly. She can also turn into other superhumans as well, gaining their powers but with less potential, which even worked when she became a female version of the Silver Surfer, which is kind of nuts. She is resistant to reality warping powers, and she even has a true form where she can manipulate elements, fly, and manipulate magical energies. She is a highly capable mutant and character. She just hasn't really done a heck of a lot since the 90s, and that's a shame. Coming in at number 10 is Sync. Sync has the mutant ability of power mimicry, meaning, like Rogue, Sync can copy the powers of other mutants. Unlike Rogue, Sync has the benefit of not doing harm to whoever he is borrowing powers from, and he can also do it without physical touch. Recently though, after being resurrected, Sync got a bit of a power boost, and he may even become a new Omega level mutant. In the story, Sync not only uses his normal mutant powers to replicate the abilities of the mutants Sunfire and Cyclops while they were both nearby, but is also able to tap into Jean Grey's telekinetic abilities while she is literally all the way chillin' on Mars. Sync's growth in power post-resurrection was first noticed back in 2021's X-Men number 18, with Sync documenting that he was now able to sync not just with mutants, but other superhumans as well, which is quite the boost, and I think it just keeps going up and up and up. In the House of M alternate reality, Sync even got to the point of permanently retaining others' powers, which would be an incredible significant power boost as well. As a main member of the X-Men though, it's kinda hard to be surprised he's getting power boosts. So, yeah.
At number 9 is iBoy. iBoy is usually undervalued because he looks really silly, and I get it. He does look like if the drummer for Kings of Leon had 57 eyes, but you should never judge a book by its cover because although iBoy doesn't look very menacing and seems rather confused most of the time, he's actually got a pretty good power set. He's got the ability to see just about anything, no matter how small and no matter how far. But on top of his microscopic and telescopic vision, he can also see basically every light wave there is, including X-ray, infrared, and thermal, among many others, including the magical plane as well. He also has night vision and even chemical detection. That's right, he can see pheromone secretions from people, giving him a tracking ability as well. iBoy is just one of those sad cases where he's just too unsettling looking to really garner much respect for who he really is and what he's truly capable of.
Number 8, Domino. Nina Thurman is a mutant weapons expert and mercenary. Under the name Domino, she was introduced in the early 90s as a member of X-Force. Domino is a survivor of a bunch of unethical scientists who were trying to create the perfect weapon. Tale as old as time, really. But this means Domino has all the talents and skills you would expect of an expert mercenary or secret agent. But we're here to talk about powers, and Domino's are unique to say the least. Domino has probability manipulation powers, meaning she is almost always lucky. She exudes at all times a subconsciously activated field that alters the probability of occurrences in her line of sight in her favor. This means that whenever she is stressed, excited, or focused on something, things will go improbably well for her, and quite poorly for her opponents. Now there is a caveat to this. She needs to actively be trying to help herself for her power to work. So like, if debris is falling from the sky and was about to hit her on the head, she would still be hurt if she just stood still. But if she tried to avoid that debris, she would move perfectly to avoid each and every piece about to hit her. Now the full potential of Domino's abilities hasn't actually been fully realized yet, and Marvel has a knack for updating powers whenever they want. But with an ability to be lucky, there's only a finite amount of things you can't do. And at number 7 is Dazzler. Dazzler, otherwise known as Alison Blair, is a mutant with the ability to transduce sound into light. She's also a very gifted singer and performer, which she uses in tandem with her powers to just blow people's minds at her concerts. But she is more than that. She can take any source of sound other than her own voice, unless it's projected back at her, as light energy which she stores up and can use in a bunch of really cool ways. Obviously, using the lights she emits, she can blind adversaries, but she can also create therapeutic light to help allies. Her Dazzle Blast, which is either the worst name ever or the best name ever, is a light show so intense it overwhelms the nervous system of whoever is watching and can knock people out. She can also shoot lasers that can cut through solid metal and photon blasts that strike with concussive force. She can create quote-unquote light fog to hide allies, she can create force fields for offensive and defensive purposes, and she can even fly. She's become the Herald of Galactus in a What If comic, and she was actually one of the more impressive versions of Thor from God Doom's Thor Corps, even coming over to the 616 reality at one point. Dazzler is awesome and very underused. Coming in at number 6 is Mimic. As a child, a nosy and curious Calvin Rankin accidentally exposed himself to one of his father's experiments. Altering his body and triggering his powers, Calvin soon discovered he was able to mimic the abilities of others who were in his close proximity. He first appeared as an adversary to the original X-Men, copying and mimicking all their powers at once. After he reformed, he was offered a role on the team. Now, as a member of the X-Men, Mimic didn't really get along too well with his fellow teammates, but he was one hell of a powerful asset to them and was responsible for a few of the team's victories. Cyclops resigned as leader shortly after Calvin joined, and weirdly, Professor X chose to make Mimic the team's leader. Over time, other powers he has copied include the powers of Hulk, Banshee, Marrow, Gambit, Rogue, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, Pharaon, Megan, Kylan, Micromax, Rachel Summers, Wolfsbane, Pete Wisdom, Psylocke, Risque, Siren, Warpath, Sunspot, Cable, Caliban, Domino, Boom Boom, Richter, Cannonball, Shatterstar, Post, Blob, Mystique, Toad, members of the Crazy Gang, and so many others. The thing about Mimic in comparison to Sync or Rogue is that he copies skills and abilities as well as powers, and even mimics physical attributes, which gives him a degree of more versatility, at the cost of lower power levels. But he's still really cool. Number 5, Multiple Man. Multiple Man has such a crazy interesting power. Okay, so I should say for starters that he isn't technically a mutant. Jamie or James Madrox is actually a changeling, which is a sort of genetic precursor for mutants who gain their abilities at birth instead of having their X gene activated later on, like in puberty or whatever. For James, his power is that of duplication. He can duplicate himself multiple times upon impact, and each of his dupes can create one single dupe. One of the real benefits of his power though is that the Prime Madrox will retain any memories of his dupes' experiences. So let's say you had to read like 10 books in a week. Well, you could have like 10 dupes all read one book each, and then when they re-merge with you, you have all of their memories of each book, if that makes sense. Multiple Man is like an information gathering powerhouse. He can also use the ability to learn skills, like one of his dupes trained as a Shaolin monk and trained in meditation. One was a trained EMT, one audited an anatomy class for 6 months, one passed the New York bar exam, one claimed to be the world's greatest detective, and just stuff like that. In his self-titled coming from 2018, he even goes into a future world that is completely ruled by Magi, which is the plural for Jamie's dupes. I'd love to see his potential shown in the MCU or something, it would just be so entertaining. And at number 4, Blink. Do you know in the beginning of the X-Men Days of Future Past live action movie when there's that really cool fight scene in the bunker between some mutants and the ultra advanced Sentinels? Now you know that mutant that was firing out portals and stuff and doing all that jazz? That is Blink, and she is so cool. Clarice Ferguson's power has a few different uses. Obviously there are the bright pink portals, but she can also throw that same energy as a sort of missile that will teleport those, or even parts of those, that she hits. The range of her power is actually quite impressive, as it has a potential range of as far as the moon and back, which is pretty freaking far, if you know. With the potential of her abilities and the cool way it is used, and even just how awesome it looks, you'd think she would have done a lot more, but she seems to not really have a whole lot of meaningful appearances. Except, if you want to see her being as amazing of a character as she should be, find her in Age of Apocalypse. So cool.
At number 3 is Morph. Morph might sometimes be underestimated because of his funny disposition and his somewhat harmless look. With one of the best personalities out of all the mutants in my opinion, Kevin Sidney uses humor to work through his internal issues after his mother's death. But externally speaking, he deals with his other issues using his totally underrated power set. Morph is a master shapeshifter, capable of changing his body and his voice to mimic those of others. Not to mention, he's also able to fly at speeds of 40 miles per hour and has a healing factor due to his ability to manipulate the makeup of his molecules. But what's coolest about his powers is that if he chooses to grow more muscles, his strength will actually increase along with his appearance, and even if he can't get his strength up to match his opponent, his defensive stats are insane due to his ability to absorb the impact of any physical projectiles by simply allowing them to pass through him.
Number 2, Gambit. Gambit has the really cool mutant ability of molecular acceleration, allowing him to convert the potential energy of a non-living object through touch and kinetically excite the molecules to the point that they explode. Usually when a mutant has an ability that manipulates molecules, they have a pretty vast array of powers. But for Gambit, he mainly uses his abilities as attacks, charging up his signature playing cards and bow staff. But in an alternate universe, there is a future variation of Gambit known as New Sun, who is what Gambit would be if he reached the full potential of his power. He can manipulate kinetic energy down to a molecular level, meaning New Sun can charge objects and living beings without being in contact with them. He can stop objects that are in motion and make still objects begin moving. He can turn into a wave of energy, letting him travel through space and other dimensions, and he was even able to defeat the Dark Phoenix in his own universe by himself. We do see 616 Gambit use a lot of the same abilities as New Sun in a fight between the two in Gambit's 1999 solo series, but just knowing the potential this awesome Cajun sensation can reach, ooh, it's spicy.
At number 1 is Chamber. Chamber is another underrated mutant with a power set that isn't quite appreciated the way it should be. It may have something to do with the trauma that Jonathan Starsmore goes through to acquire his powers, and further how that experience hinders him from achieving certain goals that other more accomplished mutants are able to. Basically, Chamber has what's described as a furnace of psionic energy stored in his chest, and when his powers are first discovered, this energy explodes out of him, destroying the lower half of his mouth and blowing a hole in his chest cavity, forcing him into intensive surgery to reconstruct the lost body parts. Eventually, he hones his powers to a point where he can aim psionic blasts on command, which is kind of like Cyclops, except in this case it's coming out of a hole in his chest. But what's more is that Chamber later learns that he's in fact a descendant of Apocalypse, and he is eventually properly reconstructed by Clan Akaba in the appearance of Apocalypse. Although this leads him into a depression, Chamber then gets a huge power boost from this modification and changes his name to Decibel before joining the New Warriors.
Coming in at number 10, it's Toad. Toad has been a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and by extension a part of the mutant community for a hot minute, but in my opinion Mortimer Toynbee hasn't really been utilized as much as he should be given his massive list of abilities. Toad has a degree of superhuman strength, specifically in his back and legs, which allow the little weirdo to jump around 25 to 37 feet, and he'll kick you so hard you ain't getting back up. He's got flexible bone structure, superhuman stamina, durability, reflexes, and agility. Toad, like a lot of super beings, has a regenerative healing factor, but unlike a lot of mutants, he has UV vision, a super strong 30-foot prehensile tongue, acidic saliva, sticky paralytical resin out of his pores, and pheromone secretion. I can understand why he isn't exactly at the top of the mutant landscape, partially because he's kind of really gross, and just overall unpleasant, but he does have a hell of a lot of abilities to offer. Number 9, Ricochet. Now I don't know if this is cheating, because you slap some web shooters, super strength, and the ability to do everything a spider can on this mutant and you basically have Spider-Man. In fact, the superhero name and costume used by Jonathan Gallo was originally used by Peter Parker as a secondary superhero identity when Spider-Man was framed for ending someone's life. But enough about Webhead. Jonathan Gallo is a mutant with the abilities of superhuman agility and reflexes, with his agility allowing him to jump long distances, and when he combines his powers, he can almost bounce off walls in a sort of, I don't know, ricocheting type movement? But that's not all. Ricochet also has another mutation in the form of his Danger Sense, which is totally not the same as Spider Sense, except it sort of is. It allows Jonathan to sense danger before it happens. Now with his agility, reflexes, and Danger Sense, this mutant possesses 3 of Spider-Man's more useful abilities, but he's just different and cool enough that I can still respect him as more than some cheap knockoff. Number 8, Lifeguard. Lifeguard, or Heather Cameron, arguably has one of the most useful mutant powers possible. Her ability is called Danger Detection Response, and basically what it means is that she can detect danger to her or others' lives in her vicinity, and she can literally evolve whatever powers are necessary for her to stop those lives from being lost. She can gain more than one power at a time and is able to control said powers after just a few seconds. It also seems to be kind of limitless in what she can do. Her situation, biomorphic adaptations have taken the form of growing wings for flight, extra arms for carrying and super strength, her skin turning into a sort of golden metallic super awesome armor, gills for underwater breathing with her legs even turning into a fishtail for better swimming ability, as well as simply upping her strength level from normal to superhuman. It's almost too fitting that she was an actual lifeguard before her powers emerged. She's a literal lifesaver.
At number 7, we've got Forget-Me-Not. Forget-Me-Not might also be a case of people judging a book by its cover because he doesn't really look too menacing, if we're being honest. But to be fair, his powers do also sound pretty lame at face value, so it could be that. Basically, this mutant can't be remembered by anyone he meets once he's out of sight. And as sad as this must be for him in his personal life, Forget-Me-Not can use this power to his advantage in a huge way in the right circumstances. In one case, he's even able to dupe all of X-Force when the team has to form an elaborate plan just to track him down. They're only able to finally catch him by having Dr. Nemesis record himself explaining to the team the existence of Forget-Me-Not as they search for him, and they keep watching it over and over again on their coffee breaks. And the only caveat to this whole situation is that the maintenance bots, along with, I'm assuming, any computer automated system, can remember Forget-Me-Not, which sort of weakens the potential for his powers in a way. So although he's more powerful than you might think, he's still got some vulnerabilities, but heck, everyone does, right? Forget-Me-Not.
Number 6. Dust. Created by Grant Morrison and Ethan Van Sciver for 2002's new X-Men number 133, Soraya Kadir is a young Muslim mutant who's enrolled in the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning. Now, she has largely been just a background character in the stories she shows up in, but Dust has been present for some of the largest events in recent X-Men history. Soraya was even one of the mutants who kept their powers after M-Day. Soraya is usually a pretty shy and quiet girl, but don't let that fool you. Her powers are no joke. Dust is able to transform into a cloud of sand, or dust, and even act as a violent sandstorm, literally stripping the flesh from her opponents. When she couldn't properly control her powers yet, Dust even unintentionally flayed 2 men alive after unleashing her power in an act of self-defense. Dust has also been shown to use her power internally, meaning like inside another person, entering her enemy's lungs and eroding them from the inside out, which is just a lovely thought. But wait, there's more. It also appears that Dust is immune to magic and telepathy based attacks in her sand form. The only problem is that if you pull out a hose or like a super soaker or something, she's pretty much done, as she's extremely vulnerable to water. She's a powerful mutant, but sorely underutilized.
At number 5, we have Marrow. I've covered this mutant in almost every one of my lists for the last few weeks now, and for good reason. She is just such an underappreciated mutant considering how versatile and honestly cool her powers are. And if you are a Marrow diehard fan, you know that she's had some difficulties with her powers, which might explain part of the reason why people tend to write her off. Initially, Marrow is unable to control the growth of her bones, which leaves her with some pretty painful and frankly terrifying looking struggles. But these days, she's honed her powers and has become quite impressive as a result. Her extreme bone growth allows her to eject super durable spikes from her skin, and then she can use them as weapons. She is adept at hand-to-hand combat, so this, paired with her ability to literally grow her own weapons and then heal up without issue, makes her pretty unstoppable.
Number 4. Jubilee. Jubilee's energy plasmoids might actually be one of the most potent of the X-Men's arsenal. The plasmoids aren't fireworks, even though they look a hell of a lot like them. They're actually closer to superheated plasma. She can create a bolt of bright light, but she can also push out enough power to bend steel or destroy a tree. And with precision can even detonate microbursts inside someone's brain. So that's the amount of range we're talking about here. But that ain't all. It goes even beyond that. As Jubilee's Generation X instructor, Emma Frost, once speculated, if wielded properly, Jubilee could detonate objects on a subatomic level, meaning this unassuming mall rat can cause explosions of atomic proportions. She's a highly underrated character in the comics and gained a lot of popularity in the 90s thanks to the X-Men TV show. And while she's gone in and out of having powers, she still remains one of the cooler characters in the X-Men's lineup. Number 3. North Star. Jean-Paul Beaubier is an interesting mutant with a few different abilities. Northstar's main ability is super speed. Not really in the traditional sense of running really fast though. Northstar can propel his body at superhuman speed, becoming a living projectile, channeling a portion of the kinetic energy of his body's molecules in a single direction. It's even possible for him to reach 99% the speed of light in a vacuum. But if he were to do it on Earth or something, he'd not only damage himself, but could quite possibly break the planet. He can also super speed any part of his body, giving him superhuman reflexes and an incredibly fast metabolism to heal wounds. What's really cool is that since he is taking atomic motion from the muscles, his muscles become closer, making him superhumanly durable, allowing him to survive moving at the speeds he does without tearing himself apart. He also uses his ability to fly by projecting the kinetic energy downwards, which in turn lifts him upwards. Northstar used this ability to basically cheat as an Olympic skier, which is kind of really unfair, but whatever. And we haven't even talked about his photokinesis and concussive blasts yet, and we're not going to, so moving on. Number 2, Sage. Sage is a super genius with a brain more powerful than any computer in the world, granting her perfect memory and rapid analytical abilities. She can come up with the perfect plan in an instant, learn just about any skill without having to practice it, remember everything she's ever experienced, perform multiple tasks at once by allocating a partition of her brain to each task, and, thanks to training with Professor X, she can engage in telepathy. Her telepathic abilities allow her to detect minds and read them, project thoughts, astral projection, cast realistic mental illusions, and she even has a kind of psionic defense unique to her called her firewall. But it doesn't even stop there, as Sage even has some biokinetic abilities as well, including reading another mutant or person's genetic code and DNA, being able to literally see who someone's related to, jump-starting latent or enhancing current mutant abilities, and has complete control over her physical body, being able to expel nanobots from her body by controlling her immune system, almost like highly advanced antivirus. She needs more time in the spotlight, like desperately. And in at number 1 is Negasonic Teenage Warhead. You may remember Ellie Phimister as the super angsty Negasonic Teenage Warhead from the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool movies. And while that character was both hilarious and awesome, she is kind of pretty different in the comics. Obviously, she is still a teenager with that ridiculous yet awesome name, but her powers seem to be vastly different. Ellie's powers are psychically based, and primarily take the form of precognitive nightmares and premonitions, meaning she sees the future. Specifically, she saw disasters before they happened, which kind of explains the heightened teenage angst thing. But she would go on to start having glimpses of danger in the near future, which allows her to plan ahead or avoid attacks. She also possesses other psychic abilities like telepathy, telekinesis, and has been able to levitate. But maybe strongest of all is her abilities of reality warping and particle manipulation and absorption. Plus, some of the superhuman starter pack abilities including strength, speed, durability, and reflexes. As well as just being an awesome character, partially due to her texting movie counterpart.
Coming in at number 10, we have Damian Wayne, the son of Batman. Genetically engineered and grown in an artificial womb following a night of passion between Talia al Ghul and Bruce Wayne, Damian was intended by the villain Ra's al Ghul to be his ultimate successor as the ruler of the League of Shadows. Trained to be an assassin from an incredibly young age, Batman wasn't even aware he had a son until the boy was 10 years old and left in his care by Talia. And while initially the father and son combo had some issues sorting out their issues and Damian's stance on Batman's whole no killing rule, Damian has since become an important member of the Bat family as the 5th Robin and continues to be an essential ally of Batman to this day.
Number 10, Sir-El. Sir-El originally believed she was Kal-El's daughter. She told Superman as much, believing she was the daughter of him and Lois Lane from the future. A genetic test would reveal that she was telling the truth in part, and genetically was Superman's daughter. In reality, it would later be revealed that she was actually created by Brainiac to bring about the end of the world. He created her using Superman's genetic material and implanted her with the Yes virus, a techno-organic virus that when unleashed would allow him to rule the world. She was also designed to be strong enough to defeat Superman. Brainiac had also intended to use Sir-El to destroy his his nemesis. Once she learned of this, she decided to erase herself from existence in order to protect the world and her pseudo-father, Superman.
Coming in at number 8, we have Cube, Cyborg's son from a dark possible future. Hailing from a world where a force known as the Darkness has threatened to corrupt all of the Earth's heroes, Cube's real name is George Marvin Stone. The son of Cyborg, Cube is literally a human mother box, connected down at the DNA level to one of the most iconic objects in the entire DC universe. Because of this complete integration with alien technology, Cube is able to perform all of the tech-based powers that his father has, alongside being capable of generating his own teleporting boom tubes whenever he wants. With all of those powers combined, Cube is definitely a cyborg you don't want to mess with. Coming in at number 7, we have Zod, the born-in-a-lab spawn of an evil Superman and Wonder Woman from the world of the Justice Lords. Named after one of Superman's most iconic villains, this Zod was born on a world where Superman turned to the dark side and turned the Justice League into the Justice Lords following the death of their universe's Flash. Unfortunately, following the birth of Zod, the baby was kidnapped by a brainiac from another universe and locked away in the Phantom Zone, which is probably the least ideal place possible to raise a child. With both Kryptonian and Amazonian blood flowing through his veins, Zod was beyond dangerous even if he just remained a little kid. Coming in at number 6, we have Nightwing, the adopted son of Batman and the very first Robin. While not biologically a child of the Justice League, Dick Grayson has been by Batman's side since nearly the very beginning, essentially adopted by Bruce Wayne following the death of his circus performer parents, and becoming the very first Robin, the Boy Wonder. Since then, Dick Grayson has accomplished a lot, helping found the Teen Titans, establishing his own superhero identity as Nightwing, and even briefly taking over the position of Batman on a few occasions where Bruce Wayne was incapable of performing the role. No matter what the future of the DC Universe brings, Nightwing will always be an incredible fan favorite.
Number 5, Damian Wayne. Brave and the Bold edition. There we are. Damian Wayne is the son of Bruce and Catwoman, but this time in the Knights of Tomorrow, where he's voiced by Patrick Kavanagh and Diedrich Bader. So while Bruce was looking at baby Wayne, Bruce realized that his son would one day have to take on crime lords. That's so funny to me, like superhero context aside, just looking at a baby and being like, oh yeah, you're gonna punch like 900 people in the throat one day. I can see it. It's amazing. After witnessing the death of his parents, he grabbed one of the 2 Robin outfits on display at the Batman Museum, and Bob's your uncle. You know the rest.
Coming in at number 4, we have Hunter Prince, the potential future son of Wonder Woman. In the same dark future that Cyborg's son Cube hailed from, Wonder Woman was one of the first heroes to be infected by the darkness, giving birth to a son that could become an even more powerful vessel for the villain. Wonder Woman gave the boy up to Superman and Lois Lane, hoping that they would be able to prevent her son from going to the dark side, but unfortunately, Hunter believed his mother was giving him up because he was male, as was Amazonian custom. Growing up angry at the previous generation that had failed him, Hunter possessed all of the strengths of Wonder Woman, including her lasso of truth and bracelets of submission, making him a truly powerful and angry enemy. Coming in at number 3, we have 2 for the price of 1 with the Tornado Twins, the potential villainous children of the Flash. Born in the 30th century when Barry Allen had briefly retired there with Iris West, these versions of the twins grew up without a father, as Barry was believed to be dead and never returned to that timeline following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Filling the place of Barry in his absence was unfortunately the Reverse Flash, a villain dead set on ruining Barry's life and creations in any way possible, and turning Barry's twin children into supervillains was right up his evil alley. Having since become members of the Legion of Zoom, a collective of speed-based villains, Dawn and Dawn Allen have the full power of the Speed Force at their disposal, making them incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous.
Number 2, Hyperman. Hyperman is the son of Wonder Woman and Superman from the Kingdom Come reality. Here, Hyperman, as a baby, was raised by Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. However, he was then later stolen away by a villain named Gog, who intended to raise the infant to become a villain. Fortunately, the present day and alternate Kingdom Come future counterparts of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman managed to team up to defeat Gog with the added babysitting assistance of Baby John himself from the future, where he is revealed to be the hero known as Hyperman. Hyperman ends up being a hero who has the combined powers of both of his parents and also has the ability to time travel.
And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have John Kent, the true son of Superman. Half Kryptonian and half human, John Kent was the most recent hero to take up the mantle of Superboy, using everything he'd learned from his parents, Clark Kent and Lois Lane, to be an inspiring force for the people of Earth. Aging quicker than usual due to weird time travel and reality-hopping hijinks, John Kent has since become the new Superman, taking over his father's position as the defender of truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, and trying to find his own place in the growing DC Omniverse. And to make things even more interesting, Batman has even theorized after examining John's DNA that the unique combination of human and Kryptonian genetics in his blood might mean that he could surpass even his own father when it comes to power once he's fully grown. All of this is to say that John Kent is, in my opinion, the most powerful son of the Justice League.
Number 9, The Huntress. Making her first appearance in All-Star Comics issue 69, nice, back in 1977, Helena is a bad lawyer for Cranston, Grayson, and Wayne. But of course, that's not all. Earth 2 is home to the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. When she was only 19 years old, her mother, Selina Kyle, who used to be Catwoman, died in a tragic mishap. And to add insult to injury, literally, the henchman, Silky Cernak, was the reason behind a photo that came out that shows Selina Kyle as Catwoman a police officer. So of course, Helena was pretty pissed and wanted to go make things right. So she took a page out of her parents' book and became the Huntress. She went after Silky Smooth Cernak and got him arrested. And her mother, turns out, didn't even kill anybody. That photo was tampered with. Hashtag photoshopped. She kept the suit and attitude and eventually wound up on the Justice Society of America. See, if you want the truth, guys, you just gotta get a super persona and then throw bad guys in nets. It's that easy.
Number 9, Van El. Van El comes to us from the famous Superman story for the man who has everything. He was a non-powered son of Superman who existed in Superman's sweetest dreams. Superman experienced these dreams after being exposed to an alien parasitic organism known as the Black Mercy. It drains its victims' life energy while giving them pleasant, hallucinogenic dreams. In Superman's dreams, Krypton was never destroyed and he still lived there. He was married and had a son named Von El. Technically, if they were on Earth, Von El would likely have powers similar to Superman, but because he and Kal-El were on Krypton, where there is no yellow sun to power either of them, they were both just normal, like other Kryptonians. Number 8, Ur-Zod. Ur-Zod comes to us from the Justice Lord's universe. He was created to be the perfect genetic heir to the throne of Earth, and to help usher in an era of peace after years of war. He was created using the genetic material of Wonder Woman and Lord Superman, but is considered to be somewhat weaker in terms of power levels than his parents. Originally, Brainiac got a hold of Ur-Zod, planning to use and raise him as his own weapon of destruction. Fortunately, he was saved by Superman from the Batman Beyond universe and taken in by their Justice League. While his inherited powers might not be as strong as his parents, Ur-Zod also has the unique ability of being able to control technology, which would prove useful later on in his fight against Brainiac. Man, Brainiac's always making all these fake children. Or well, I guess he didn't make this one, but he wanted to like mold it. Brainiac's always up to no good. That's what I'm learning from this list. Number 7, Lara Lane Kent. Lara Kent is the unborn daughter of Lois Lane and Superman in the Injustice universe. In a dream that Superman has during year 3, we get to see what her life would have been like had that fateful day gone differently for Superman and he hadn't been made to kill his wife and unborn daughter. In this alternate dream reality, Lara is raised by both her parents, her first word notably being mom. When her powers begin to manifest, she is taught by her father and his friends on the Justice League about how to use them. Lara at one point as a young adult Rambeau looks down at the Earth with her father from space and wonders if the fighting and crime will ever stop. Her dad tells her that they could, if they wished, use their powers to enforce order to save the humans of Earth from themselves, forcing them to have peace. But Lara teases her dad, responding that he sounds like a B-grade villain saying that. Instead, Lara ends up working as an ambassador for the League, helping everyday people to learn how to fight for themselves, instead of just always continuing to have superheroes fighting for them. Number 6. Ariella Kent. Ariella Kent is the daughter of Linda Danvers, formerly Supergirl, and Earth 1 Superman. Ariella lived happily with her parents, presumably until the Spectre informed Linda that she needed to return to her own parallel reality. If you're wondering if it's creepy that Supergirl and Superman have a child together in an alternate timeline, it kinda is if you just hear that without context, but with context, it really isn't that creepy. Linda Danvers is not a Supergirl who is related at all to Clark Kent, not even in her own reality, and even if she had been, which she isn't, this Clark Kent was actually from a different alternate Earth altogether. So no, they're not related. After Linda returned to her reality, Spectre agreed to allow her daughter to live. Ariella, as a 6-year-old girl, was supremely powerful, but didn't have the maturity to wield her powers wisely, because she's just a little kid. She was capable of time travel and mostly traveled through space, playing and unknowingly creating mass destruction wherever she went. That's what happens when you're a kid that is that powerful. You just play with planets and blow them up. Yikes.
Coming in at number 5, we have Terry McGinnis, aka the next Batman. Originally appearing in the beloved animated series Batman Beyond, Terry was the sarcastic and wisecracking next-generation Batman in a dystopian future Gotham, led by an elderly and retired Bruce Wayne. However, unlike Nightwing, Terry's connection to Bruce wound up being more than just as an adoptive father, as it was eventually revealed that Bruce Wayne is biologically Terry's father, as Terry's actual dad had his genetics replaced by those of Bruce Wayne, essentially making the two heroes related. Even without this connection though, Terry McGinnis stood out as a worthy successor to Batman, developing his own iconic rogues gallery and even being able to defeat villains that the original Batman never could, such as the Joker.
Number 4. Kara Kent Wayne. Kara was the daughter of Superman and Lois from the same alternate Earth of 3839, born 3 years after her brother. She herself had superpowers similar to her father's, though weaker due to her hybrid human and Kryptonian physiology. Kara would grow up to become a hero and take up the mantle Supergirl, and ended up falling in love with the newest Batman, who was actually Bruce Wayne Jr., the son of the original Batman. Bruce Jr. took up the mantle of Batman following the previous Batman, Dick Grayson's, death. At Kara's wedding, her brother Joel showed up, having received powers from the serum Lex Luthor had given him, and attacked his family, killing Kara. Number 3. Jonathan Lane Kent. I love that throughout Superman stories we get to see how powerfully good the super family can be and how powerfully evil they can potentially be as well. Bottom line, either way you slice it, they're powerful. John Lane Kent is the son of Superman and Lois Lane from an alternate future. It was believed that he had died due to an irreparable medical issue with his DNA. Shockingly, it was later revealed that the villain Harvest managed to actually save John, taking his body to the past and resurrecting him. Harvest had his own plans for what John would become and turned him into a villain, using him as a weapon to destroy all metahumans. John is more powerful than his father, sharing his powers, but also possessing the ability to turn invisible. It's later revealed that the original Superboy Kon-El was basically a clone of John, and not Superman like we originally thought. Shocking.
Number 2. Athanasia Al Ghul. Making her first appearance in the comics on Injustice 2 issue 3, Athanasia, she's referred to as the daughter of the Bat. Talia kept her as a secret from Bruce, because of course, that's how it works in this world always, so many secrets. But she let Damian become a hero and work with Bruce. So, nice. Athanasia was a member of the League of Assassins. She came out of hiding after the fall of Superman's regime and worked with her mother and grandfather, Thomas Wayne. She was caught in El Diablo's explosion and wasn't shielded, presumed dead, until she popped up in Gorilla City after being resurrected from the Lazarus Pit.
Number 1. Jonathan Samuel Kent, or just John Kent if you will. This is Superman and Lois Lane's child who was born during the events of Convergence. He grew up without really ever knowing the truth of who his parents were, growing up relatively normal but suspicious of what his parents really did. The Kents changed their name to the Whites, escaping the fate of their dying universe and taking up residence on the new Prime Earth, trying to raise John normally and not get in the way way of their alternate selves in this new world. Lois still worked as a writer and journalist, but publishing her works under the pseudonym Author X, and Superman kept his superheroic activities under wraps and secretive, going out at night and appearing as a shadow of Superman, as this world kinda already had their own Kal-El. Eventually, the New 52 Superman died, and so the Whites became the Kents once more, and stepped into their usual roles once again. John's powers manifested when he first hit puberty, discovering his laser vision when he accidentally killed the family cat. Shortly afterward, he would take up the mantle Superboy and become a hero alongside his father, starting a rivalry and later a friendship with Batman's son, Damian Wayne. But that's all behind him now, as he went to space, grew up quickly, and now he's a member of the Legion of Superheroes and goes on adventures in the future. Because comics.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Bruce Wayne Jr. Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. In issue 89, we see the front cover and it's Lois Lane marrying Bruce Wayne. It rhymes, so you know it's a good one. And then to the left we see Superman, and he's just thrilled. He's awesome. He's glad to be there. So we haven't upset Lois Lane right off the hop. She's pissed at Superman because he keeps going on these secret missions with Wonder Woman. And then on the same page mind you, just a little bit lower, it shows her with Bruce Wayne, and she's loving it. She's like, damn, Bruce is attractive. What? She's like on his shoulders, they're wakeboarding in the sunset. It's beautiful. So naturally, they have a baby. I mean, come on, Bruce rocking the green Speedo. Obviously. I love this issue. Superman is like, hey dude, no sweat. You actually have my blessing. Go for it. You got it. Then the next panel, he's like, oh, I blew it. Shit. It's so good. The baby, of course, being Bruce Wayne Jr. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up, because every time you do, somebody here grabs my shoulder and says, good job. And then I smile for hours, so help me smile. Plus it helps us here at the studio too. Awesome, thanks. Okay, over to Huntress.
Coming in at number 9, we have Shane Johns, the son of Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl from an alternate future. While attempting to find a way to prevent Lex Luthor from unleashing the Dark Goddess Perpetua, the Justice League found themselves traveling through a 6-dimensional doorway to a future where the forces of good had seemingly finally won their constant battle with the forces of evil. All of the members of the Justice League seemed to have found happiness, especially Hawkgirl and Martian Manhunter, who had an ambitious young son named Shane. Unfortunately, this reality turned out to all be a ruse by the World Forger, but in a weird twist, Shane still decided to ally himself with the real Justice League, and used his incredibly strong psychic abilities to help save the day. That'll do, kid. That'll do.
Number 8, Damian Wayne. The son of Batman and Talia al Ghul made his debut back in Batman, Son of the Demon in 1987. And he was perfect. I mean, genetically speaking, he was perfect. He was born from an artificial womb, and he was supposed to join the League of Assassins and be a great warrior. That was his life, just laid out. There you go. Which doesn't sound like a bad itinerary. Having a powerful skill set in martial arts before he was even a teenager, Talia al Ghul explained who he was and then left him with his father, Batman. I mean, she was hoping that this would cause problems for Bruce, and then that this would disrupt Batman's work. You know, getting a little one to spy on Batman, stir up some shit with Tim Drake. He was actually quite eager to replace Tim Drake as Batman's wingman, so troubled Damian Wayne grabs another Robin costume, added some cool League of Assassins gear, and then takes out the villain Spook. Does he arrest him? Report his Instagram? No. He actually cuts his head right off his body, so that's certainly one way of serving up justice. Guy's wild. At one point, he even ended up sucker punching Tim Drake off of a T-Rex model, not a real T-Rex. Don't worry. And of course, after Batman R.I.P. and Batman Battle for the Cowl, he becomes the 5th Robin. Number 7, Thomas Taylor Wayne. Wow, what a great middle name. Best name ever, I heard. I don't know. Wild. Thomas Taylor Wayne is the son of Batman and Supergirl, Lara Wayne. In Superman and Batman Generation 3, he was born in the year 2626. And spoiler alert, he dies in 2724. In this generation's imaginary series by John Byrne, we see Thomas Wayne's parents as immortal, which is always a nice time, meaning that Laura is Bruce's great-granddaughter by adoption, and Thomas is both Bruce's son and great-grandson. Huh.
Wow.
Number 6, Ibn al-Zufash. Definitely messed up that name, but we're doing our best here. It translates to son of the bat. Making his first appearance in Kingdom Come issue 2, Mark Waid and Alex Ross did such a good job. The artwork is absolutely stunning in this epic series. Ibn is the son of Batman and Talia al Ghul. See, Talia kept Ibn as a secret from the Dark Knight. Then later on in life, he basically had to choose what kind of lifestyle he wanted for himself. You know, either go the way of his grandfather, Ra's al Ghul, or follow the steps of his father, Batman. Now, of course, he chose the Bat and took his own grandfather down. That a boy, nice. One time I told my family my grandpa was smoking inside and then I got grounded. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Glad it worked well for him. Awesome. Ibn played a little differently though. I mean, he used his grandfather's resources to do good. He eventually winds up falling in love with Nightstar, daughter of Dick Grayson, and Starfire.
Number 5. Joel Kent. Joel Kent comes to us from Earth 3839. There he was the son of Superman and Lois Lane. However, while Lois was pregnant with Joel, she was exposed to gold kryptonite by the villains Joker and Lex Luthor. This caused her son to be born without any powers. Lex used Joel's shame to his advantage, claiming that Joel's father was the one responsible for this. Lex said that Superman had exposed his unborn son to gold kryptonite on purpose, fearful that his son would become even more great than him. This seeming revelation caused Joel to become more detached from his family, thinking of Lex as more of a father than his own father. He also became more cruel over time. Eventually, he became a villain to his family, accepting a serum that Lex said would restore his powers.
Number 4. Bruce Wayne Jr. Coming straight from one of the most wild comic book issues ever, we have Batman and Captain America. That's right, back in 1977, we see Bruce Wayne Jr., the son of Batman, and, well, we don't really know who the mother is. I'm sure she's great though, I'm sure she's awesome. His uncle, being that of Dick Grayson, was always admired by Bruce Wayne Jr. I mean, of course, look at him, I admire him, I didn't even know this guy. As a child, he would dress up in his uncle's Robin suit and do some at-home workouts. Punch, punch, kick, kick, bam, you know? The good stuff, some Zumba fitness, you know, getting a feel for the suit, which personally, I wouldn't take that suit off if I had access to it. That thing would stink all the time, gross. So by the time he was 18, he actually worked alongside the new Batman, Dick Grayson. Then after the passing of Batman, Bruce Wayne Jr. swapped outfits and stepped in to take over as Batman. So sick. Kind of like in Santa Claus when Tim Allen puts on the suit. It's go time. Also, this issue has the smoothest transition when Captain America first shows up. It goes from Batman and Robin jumping out of the way from a bomb, and then cuts to Cap in an explosion with him, like the same kind of fire. Little details like that just capture me. So good. So good. Number 3, Terry McGinnis. Alright, imagine you're going for your flu shot and then it turns out it's actually not a flu shot and it's actually Bruce Wayne's DNA. I mean, after I got the flu, I would have some questions, that's for sure. And I can like chop people in the necks. Like, what's going on here? I feel sick, but I'm great at backflips. Project Cadmus director Amanda Waller was out looking for an eventual replacement for Batsy. So she figured she'd get started on Project Batman Beyond. And the key, well, Batman's blood samples left over from his altercations. That mixed in with some nanotech solutions, bam, we have the DNA of Bruce Wayne. So she was out looking for the perfect couple to, you know, force this life onto, and then found that the McGinnis household was perfect. So Ward McGinnis goes for a flu shot, and then he doesn't even know he's soon going to be the father of a biological Bruce Wayne. Surprise, it's a boy. No, for sure, it's a boy, trust me.
Coming in at number 2, we have Hyperman, a distant future version of the potential son of the Man of Steel. In the same reality where the storyline Kingdom Come took place, the young son of this reality Superman, Jonathan Kent, was kidnapped by the villain known as Gog and encased first in a prison of kryptonite and then trapped within the weird branch of reality known as Hypertime. Luckily, someone was there to watch over the infant, his own future self, a hero known as Hyperman that was destined to become even greater than Superman. The baby was eventually able to be saved through the joint efforts of the Kingdom Come universe and the main DC universe's heroes, and the Kingdom Come parents of this child are now determined to make sure that Hyperman's bright future becomes a reality.
And finally, number 1, Bruce Wayne Jr. We go over now to the 1965 version of Bruce Wayne Jr. making his debut in World's Finest issue 154. He's the son of Catherine Kane and Bruce Wayne Sr. He's part of the badass duo referred referred to as the Super Sons, and that name is pretty perfect for the gang. Cited by Superman Jr., the two would grow up together. And the opening of the issue shows them both reading about their fathers and their super achievements. It's really cute. They even get married on the same day. It's wild. Bad boys for life. My favorite part though is seeing the two interact with Superman Jr.'s powers. There's one point where Superman Jr. wouldn't let Batman Jr. down from a teeter-totter. He said, "I won't let you down until you admit my dad has caught more crooks than your dad." The classic "my dad can totally beat your dad up" scenario. The Super Sons eventually figured out their existence was a sham, and they were just a computer simulation all along. But aren't we all in a simulation?